Chapter 299. Although they were enemies, Satan's words made Chi-Yu feel much better about him. He nodded gently and said, "Your Majesty Satan, you are indeed a wise monarch. Unfortunately, I have offended your dignity today. At the same time, I am a human, and I have no desire for power. If you are willing to marry Lung, to me, if you really want Lung, to be happy, then cancel your idea of attacking the human world. In that case, you will be my most respected father-in-law." Satan's face changed, and he said coldly, "What if I don't?" Chi-Yu said without hesitation, "Then we are enemies, enemies who will not stop until one of us dies." Satan snorted and laughed. "Good, you are indeed the man that Lung likes. Under the temptation of power, you can actually not compromise. Lung did not misjudge you. Unfortunately, you have chosen to be my enemy. I am determined to get the earth. No matter who it is, as long as they stand in my way, then they can only die." The huge pressure appeared again. Compared to before, the pressure this time was doubled. The purple sun in the sky became unprecedentedly bright, and the huge dark energy shrouded Satan's body. Chi-Yu could clearly feel that the 12 wings behind Satan were crazily absorbing the dark energy. The huge pressure seemed to cover the sky and the sun. In the face of such a huge energy, any technique would become a joke. Even the entire space was blocked by Satan. There was no other way but to confront it head-on. In the face of Satan, the light in Chi-Yu's eyes became extremely persistent. His body flashed alternately with 4 colors of light. The 4 colors of light that belonged to his thundercloud force flashed every time. A layer of gentle or overbearing energy fluctuation appeared, forcibly breaking the huge pressure that shrouded him. Although Satan's energy was extremely strong, it was impossible for him to overwhelm Chi-Yu with pressure. Lucifer stood on the platform. The blood on his body had stopped flowing, but his face became extremely pale. However, his face was abnormally pale. He had never imagined that Chi-Yu would become so powerful in such a short period of time. Even after losing the Xianyuan sword, he was still able to injure him in a single move. Chi-Yu's control over energy was simply too frightening. He was actually able to hide compressed wind attribute energy within such a dense ball of lightning. This was the first time Lucifer had seen such an attack. That was why he had suffered such a huge loss in the first exchange. A dark red light filled the entire horizon. Only the light of the purple sun could penetrate it. It enveloped Satan's body and completely dyed this great demonic god purple. There was a huge energy wave. It was effortless for him to maintain such great pressure. Satan's mental power was completely locked onto Chi-Yu's body. As long as he showed the slightest sign of being unable to hold on, he would immediately be attacked by Satan. At their level of battle, as long as one side had the upper hand, it would be difficult to change the situation. Satan was cautious, even if he knew that the opponent's overall strength was not as good as his. He did not have the slightest bit of carelessness. This was also something that Sanaa could not compare to. Satan's energy aura was flawless. Chi-Yu floated proudly in front of him, while constantly searching. He also raised his own energy to fight against Satan's increasing pressure. The two of them floated in the air. Behind Satan was an endless dark red sea, while behind Chi-Yu, the huge ink Kirin was constantly flashing, forming a sharp contrast. Although Chi-Yu's energy light looked weaker, it did not show any signs of weakening. As Satan's energy increased, his energy also continued to increase. The confrontation made Chi-Yu understand a truth. Under the cover of the purple sun, Satan's recovery speed would definitely not be slower than his. After all, this was the Hell world, a world that belonged to him. Under the huge pressure between them, the air about 100 meters between Chi-Yu and Satan had become solid. It was solid. That was the solidification caused by the huge energy fluctuations. Their strength was too strong. This was going to be a true God-level battle. The difference in philosophy made it inevitable that they would fight. No one spoke, and their spiritual power was firmly locked on their opponent. The hell creatures in the core circle of hell who were watching the battle did not even dare to breathe. In such a battle, no one could intervene, not even a strong person like Lucifer. Retreat. Chi Yu and Satan made the same action almost at the same time. The energy density between the two of them was too high. It was impossible to launch an attack. Therefore, at that moment, they both chose to retreat. Dark red flames burned on Satan's body. With the experience of fighting with Sanaa, Chi Yu knew that Satan's ability was also a combination of darkness and fire. However, Sanaa's fire attribute energy mainly came from the magma, while Satan's fire attribute energy came from the purple sun in the sky. The difference between them was obvious. It was not a battle of the same level. Green wind, began to spin behind Chi Yu. In an instant, the Kirin shadow behind him had completely turned green. It let out a powerful roar and suddenly integrated into the green wind. Chi Yu floated there calmly. The pair of wings on his back had already become 3 pairs. The pure gold armor covered his whole body, forming a sharp contrast with the black armor on Satan's body. Every time a huge energy fluctuation appeared, the confrontation between them became a little more intense. The 12 wings on Satan's back shot out a blade-like light at the same time. They quickly assembled in front of him, forming a huge blade net. The surging energy stopped in the air. With every second, its volume and energy fluctuation increased greatly. A tornado appeared. It was hundreds of meters tall, almost connecting the sky and the earth. The diameter of the center was more than 50 meters. Such a huge amount of wind attribute energy rarely appeared in hell. However, with the help of Chi Yu's 8-cloud level thundercloud force and natural source energy, it appeared easily. Moreover, this was just the beginning. Chi Yu roared towards the sky. His body shone with green light. The huge tornado swayed and moved forward. Behind it, a series of afterimages appeared. No, they were not afterimages. They were real entities. It happened in an instant. Behind the giant tornado, 9 smaller tornadoes appeared. They formed a giant barrier around the largest tornado and headed toward Sandan. They rushed toward Satan. Mother and child tornado, the strongest area attack of the wind attribute energy. In the Kirin clan, only the strongest wind Kirin could use this super ability. At this moment, it appeared in Chi Yu's hands. A green tornado. It completely merged the sand and stones on the ground into it. It covered the sky and flashed past Chi Yu. It seemed to be moving very slowly, but it only took an instant for it to arrive in front of Satan. A huge amount of wind energy fluctuated. It caused the surrounding air to become extremely chaotic. Even with Satan's strength, he couldn't help but be shocked. Chi Yu's ability was much stronger than he had imagined. 12 pieces of black energy floated out. Each of them was in the shape of a fan. Amidst the ear-piercing sound of friction, 9 small tornadoes appeared in front of the 9 fan-shaped black energy. They were actually cut open from the middle. For a moment, sand and stones flew everywhere, dyeing the entire space. The largest tornado was also completely strangled by the last 3 fan-shaped dark energies. The wind disappeared, but it was still blowing, causing Chi Yu and Satan's bodies to sway slightly. In fact, it wasn't the effect of the wind. It was the collision of energy between them. It was a tie. It was a tie. The hell creatures in the core circle of hell were in an uproar. From their great leader, Satan, they already knew that the one fighting against Satan was a human. However, this human was actually able to fight to a tie with their great king. In fact, Chi knew that it was a tie on the surface. Although it seemed like a tie on the surface, he had consumed much more energy than Satan. If Satan hadn't been so cautious, he would have been at a disadvantage just now. Satan said calmly, "Not bad. Your control of the wind has reached the level where you can do whatever you want. However, perhaps you still don't know that darkness is a great energy that can devour all elemental energy. In front of me, even if your control of the wind is more profound, it won't have any effect. Chi-Yu didn't say anything because he needed to focus more on condensing energy. The source of nature in his body was already in a saturated state, recovering his energy at the fastest speed possible. Every time a huge energy fluctuation appeared, Chi-Yu's body would sway slightly. After all, although the dark energy had been filtered, it was much more violent than the energy molecules of other attributes. This was especially so after the first collision of energy between the two of them. Now, it had become very difficult to absorb the energy molecules in the air. Looking at the golden armor on Chi-Yu's body, Satan said, "You are no match for me. I will give you another chance. Either marry my daughter, stay in the hell world, and wait for the day to come to conquer Earth with me. Or today will be the day you die." Chi-Yu smiled. "In that case, I really want to see how His Majesty Satan will kill his son-in-law." With a flash, Chi-Yu moved again. This time, the energy that appeared on his body was blue, a gentle blue. The water thundercloud force surged out, forming ripples in the air. The huge energy fluctuations seemed to make the air moist. Satan's expression became much more serious. Since Chi-Yu had appeared, he had already displayed 3 different types of energy. It should be known that he could only display 2 types of energy, darkness and fire. In terms of talent, he knew that this human in front of him was even better than him. However, he was really too young. Otherwise, if he had the same lifespan as Satan, there would be no need to continue today's battle at all. The water thundercloud force floated out, forming a water curtain. Then, wrapped by the water thundercloud force, dazzling blue light balls appeared. They were also blue, but they were a combination of gentleness and violence. The water thundercloud force and the thundercloud force complemented each other. One could clearly see that the ball lightning wrapped by the water thundercloud force was constantly fluctuating. The huge energy formed a water and thunder hell in front of Chi-Yu in the blink of an eye. This time, Satan's expression really changed. Of course, he knew the power of the ball lightning. The only place in the hell that he did not dare to go was the demonic canyon. That was a smooth road to the human world, and at the same time the most terrifying place in the hell. Satan did not dare to wait for Chi-Yu to condense his energy. His body suddenly floated forward, and in the blink of an eye he had already entered the range of the water and thunder. A layer of dark red energy turned into sharp needles in the air. Under the precise control of Satan's mental strength, the needles searched for the water and thunder. Boom! A violent boom appeared in the air. Chi-Yu groaned, and his body suddenly retreated. The water and thunder hell had consumed a lot of his energy, but the effect was not as good as he had imagined. Although it tore apart the dark energy connection between Satan and the purple sun, the righteousness of the thundercloud force did not cause real harm to Satan. Perhaps this was because the thundercloud force had not broken through to the true 9th cloud. A huge black figure suddenly appeared in front of Chi-Yu. It was instant teleportation. The instant teleportation that belonged to a demon king came without any warning. The huge 12 wings wrapped around Chi-Yu in an instant. At the same time, Satan's hand was in front of Chi-Yu. Thunder, fire, water, wind. The 4 types of thundercloud force, thunder, fire, water, and wind, under the ingenious combination of Chi-Yu, burst out waves of tyrannical energy fluctuations. They constantly clashed with Satan in the air, causing him to be unable to retract his 12 wings and trap himself. At the same time, the energy between them increased more and more intensely. The ground of the central square had already begun to show deep ravines. Once the energy that occasionally leaked out entered the core circle of the hell, it immediately turned the area it enveloped into a true hell. At this time, under the situation of attacking the opponent with all his strength. Even Satan could not control the situation from happening. Satan's energy was too powerful. Every attack was filled with infinite pressure. The air seemed to be a part of his body. All kinds of feelings of losing his center of gravity constantly attacked Chi-Yu's body, causing him to be unable to exert his attack power to the greatest extent. Golden light constantly surged, and Kirin's illusion appeared again. It crossed its huge sword and blocked Satan's fist. The energy of Kirin's arm suddenly erupted. In a deafening roar, the black and gold figures suddenly separated. A white mark was left on Satan's fist, while Chi-Yu's Kirin's illusion had broken. Even the energy of Kirin's illusion had been shattered by Satan's fist. At the very least, it could not be used again in this current battle. Floating in the air, Chi-Yu gasped for breath. In this short period of hand-to-hand combat, he had already used all his strength. Satan's dark energy was full of destructive aura. Only a small part of it had entered his body, but it had already caused all the meridians in Chi-Yu's body to be on the verge of exploding at any time. Under the effect of the natural source, it was barely resolved. Blood flowed down the corner of Chi-Yu's mouth. His gaze was still firm, but the energy fluctuations around his body had become more unstable than before. Satan looked the same as before. He slowly retracted his right hand, a murderous intent constantly flickering in his eyes. It had been a long time since he had met an opponent that could compete with him. This was just a human. However, his strength was far beyond his imagination. Dark red energy condensed in the air, and the 12 wings on Satan's back erupted with dark red energy at the same time, causing the wings to expand in a state of energy. Each wing expanded to a length of 100 meters, and every time it flapped, it would bring about a hurricane of dark energy. This was Satan's true strength. The armor on his body had now completely turned blood red. His ferocious face and the demonic horns on his head were all emitting incomparably strong energy fluctuations. A pure black energy ball appeared between Satan's huge hands. His hands had appeared in front of him with his palms clasped together, and as the black energy ball appeared, they gradually separated. Black. It was a sparkling black, incomparably pure black. At the very least, Chi-Yu had never seen such a black color before. It was a feeling that could not be resisted. There was no other energy mixed in. It was just pure darkness. Chi-Yu knew that this was the energy of Satan's natural source. What he wanted to do now was to destroy himself. Looking at the energy fluctuations in Satan's hands, Chi-Yu smiled. He seemed to have given up resisting, and the energy fluctuations around his body had clearly become much weaker. Perhaps some people would ask why he didn't use the infinite change for Star's realm technique. Actually, it wasn't that Chi-Yu didn't want to use it. It was that he didn't have a chance at all. At the same time, facing an opponent like Satan, the infinite change for Star's realm technique couldn't unleash its intended effect. As long as Chi-Yu and Satan clashed at full force, the infinite change for Star's realm technique would immediately break. After all, Chi-Yu's current strength had already far surpassed that of Wen-Ting's father, who had created Kirin. Unless he could truly reach the 9 clouds and refine Kirin again, when facing an opponent of the same level, the infinite change for Star's realm technique could no longer create miracles. Satan looked coldly at Chi-Yu. He would no longer give this human any chance. Although the black energy ball in his hands looked very small, it was a black hole that Satan had created using his own energy. It was a black hole that could devour everything. Even with his strength, he could only control it so much. This was because he had already lost too much face in front of his own people in order to subdue Chi-Yu. Now, if he wanted to regain his lost face, he had to destroy Chi-Yu in the shortest time possible. Therefore, Satan didn't hesitate to use up his energy to use his most powerful attack. Go to hell, kid. On this day, next year, it will be the anniversary of your death. The black energy ball appeared. Like a maggot in a rotten bone, it appeared in front of Chiyu. It was on the ground. Energy was transferred instantly, and there was no process of flight. When it left Satan's hands, it was already in front of Chiyu. An illusory, distorted black hole appeared. An enormous suction force and irresistible energy appeared around Chi-Yu's body. Chi-Yu even felt that his body was shrinking, while the black hole in front of him was expanding. He knew that if he was really sucked in, he would immediately be crushed to pieces. Not even a scrap would be left. At this critical juncture, a 5-colored energy light appeared. Even the Hell Realm couldn't escape from the 5 elements. In that instant, Chi-Yu's body became illusory in front of the illusory black hole. The black hole's suction force stopped, and Chi-Yu's body returned to its original size. Satan stared at everything in front of him, dumbstruck. He couldn't believe that this was real. The black hole actually didn't attack his opponent under the control of his mental strength? How was this possible? Actually, it wasn't that the black hole didn't want to attack, but that it couldn't find a target to attack. Under the effect of the Kongtong Seal's undying domain, the current Chi-Yu's body shape was very similar to the black hole's. Therefore, the black hole also thought that he was the same kind, and that he wasn't a destructive energy. Since there was nothing in front of it, what else could it devour? Cold sweat instantly appeared on every part of Chi-Yu's body. At this moment, he finally understood why the Eastern world didn't have gods and demons like the Western world, and only left behind 10 divine weapons. The 10 great divine weapons were indeed worthy of being called the 10 great divine weapons. Even the Kongtong Seal, which was ranked at the bottom, could erupt with such a powerful effect at this critical moment. Satan's attack was something he hadn't expected. If the Kongtong Seal's undying domain hadn't erupted on its own, he would probably be dead by now. Not only had the Kongtong Seal helped him defeat powerful enemies several times, but it had also saved his life several times. In front of him was a black hole. Chi-Yu and the incomparably dark energy stared at each other. Although it wasn't a true black hole, its offensive power was too terrifying. Even when he had the Xianyuan sword, Chi-Yu wasn't confident that he could deal with such an attack. However, the Kongtong Seal's undying domain just so happened to restrain it. A strange smile appeared in Chi-Yu's eyes. His illusory body moved, and in an instant, it actually wrapped around the terrifying black hole. Before Satan could react, the spiritual link between him and the black hole was forcibly severed by Chi-Yu. A greenish-gray light appeared around Chi-Yu's body, and in the next moment, a green wind drifted out. Chi-Yu couldn't teleport energy like Satan, but under the full force of his thundercloud force, the green light's speed was no different from teleportation. No. Satan roared and suddenly rushed in the direction of the green light. However, what greeted him was Chi-Yu's fist, which was flickering with black and silver light. Lin Bing Doja formation, Lin Bing Doja. Kirin's arm, Skybreaker. Satan was going crazy. Even when faced with the full force of Kirin's arm, the huge dark energy couldn't stop him. Chi-Yu's body was sent flying, drawing a beautiful arc in the air. Blood spurted out. Satan was in a berserk state, and he had used all his strength. He used all his strength and did not even care about the cracks on the armor on his chest that had been shaken by Chi-Yu. Kirin's arm, Skybreaker. Another shout rang out, but this time the voice wasn't as domineering as Chi-Yu's. A silver figure appeared in front of Satan in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, it was still Chi-Yu, but this time it was a silver Chi-Yu. The energy wave wasn't any different from before. The 8-cloud super ink Kirin's arm, wasn't that easy to resist. Even Satan couldn't move forward in the face of such an attack. The silver and black fists collided in the air, but this time there was no sound. The silver figure disappeared, and the black figure also retreated in the huge shock. Satan stared at Chi-Yu, who was floating in the air in the distance and was covered in golden armor. He didn't understand what happened just now, Blood also flowed from the corner of his mouth. The black armor on his right arm had been completely broken by the two powerful attacks of Kiran's arm. The Lord of Hell, the great demon king, Satan, was injured. Of course, Satan didn't understand what was going on. Doppelganger domain. It was the first time Chiyu used doppelganger domain. Although the appearance of the doppelganger was exactly the same as his real body, the soul was Wenting's. With Chiyu's current strength, he could only maintain doppelganger domain for a short period of time. Therefore, Wenting only attacked once, but this explosion was enough for the current situation. The cyan light ball. It flew to the sky above the core circle of hell. Under the surprised gaze of the hell creatures, the cyan appearance disappeared, revealing a ferocious black color. The black energy ball didn't look very big. Under the astonished gazes of the hellish creatures, the most terrifying killing machine created by Satan exploded. There was no loud noise, no monstrous momentum, but the silent fear was even more terrifying. One moment, it was that short moment, 1/5 of the entire core circle of hell disappeared. A huge gap appeared in the core circle of hell. It disappeared so cleanly that only a deep circular hole was left on the ground. Devour. The terrifying devouring of the black hole only lasted for a moment, but it had already devoured 1/5 of the core circle of hell. The buildings were devoured, the hell creatures in that area were devoured, and even the soil was devoured. Satan was stunned, and so was Chiyu. No one had expected that the black hole could produce such terrifying energy. It should be known that a large number of hell creatures from all over the world had gathered in the core circle of hell, and in 1/5 of the core circle of hell, there were at least millions of hell creatures, and this was the lowest estimate. This eruption actually led to the extinction of dozens of small races in the infernal realm. This was something Chiyu had not expected. Satan looked at his own hand. Even he found it hard to believe that the black hole would be so powerful. In truth, he did not know that the bold Chiyu had used the energy of the origin of nature to forcefully compress the black hole before sending it out. Although it was only a tenth of the black hole's size, this tenth had increased the black hole's power by several times. However, Chiyu was not having a good time either. The black hole's power had been compressed by more than 1/3 in an instant. If it wasn't for the undying domain, he would have been dead by now. Father-in-law, you can't blame me for this. I'm just getting rid of a hot potato. How could the word cool describe it? He hadn't killed many hell creatures, even after spending so much effort. But the black hole attack this time had destroyed 1/5 of hell's core circle. If there were a few more attacks, or if another black hole like that fell into the dense burning legion, Satan's goal of conquering Earth would be over without him having to do anything. Satan raised his head and looked at Chiyu in a completely different light. Every bone in his body was cracking, and no one knew what he was feeling right now. Destroy, destroy. Human, you destroyed my years of hard work. You destroyed the core circle of hell. Do you know what this will bring to the human race? Chiyu was shocked, but he was not afraid. No matter what it means, it won't be easy for hell to move unhindered in the human world. There will be countless powerful forces in front of you. Satan's voice was filled with silence. Death, in the process of conquering, I will make hundreds of humans pay for what you have done today. Of course, the only ending for you now is death. No, I won't let you die. Death is too easy for you. I will let you suffer endless pain and give you endless life. I will let you enjoy that wonderful feeling forever. Chiyu had basically achieved his goal. He had never thought of using his own strength to destroy all the hell creatures here. That was unrealistic. He was already very lucky to be able to borrow Satan's strength to destroy 1/5 of the core circle of hell. That attack could be said to be a joint effort between him and Satan. Otherwise, it wouldn't have produced such a terrifying effect. Father-in-law, it seems that the misunderstanding between us is still too deep. I have to go. Since you insist on going to Earth, then fine. I will wait for your arrival on Earth. When the time comes, don't blame me for going against my superiors. You want to leave? Satan moved. With his expanded body and 12 100-meter wings, he arrived in front of Chi-Yu in an instant. His huge fist directly bombarded Chi-Yu's chest. 5-colored energy waves appeared again. Undying domain, absolute undying. Chi-Yu took the punch with a smile on his face. His body turned into a ball of energy and flew away like a cannonball. Satan was about to give chase when 5 dragons of different colors appeared in front of him without warning. The energy of the 5 elements condensed in an instant, and a huge energy wave collided with Satan's body. In terms of body size, he didn't have any advantage against the 5 elements divine dragons. Satan was already injured, and it would take a long time to get rid of the 5 elements divine dragons. The appearance of the 5 elements divine dragons also completely cut off his spiritual lock on Chi-Yu. Chapter 300. Chi-Yu's figure disappeared along with his voice, and in the core circle of hell, a dazzling display of blood-red fireworks erupted. The lightning beads buried in the bodies of the black generals were detonated by Chi-Yu at the same time. What was the effect? They were like human bombs. The spectators were so densely packed. What was the result of 5,000 human bombs exploding? Of course, the effect was definitely not as good as that of the black hole before, but the number of hell creatures that died directly reached 6 digits. Chi-Yu left. The 5 elements divine dragon was finally dealt with by Satan, but he also lost the possibility of chasing after Chi-Yu. The core circle of hell had completely fallen into a state of panic, and the energy on Satan's body fluctuated unstably like never before. The Burning Legion did not move. Panic would not appear in the Burning Legion. They were all looking at their great leader, the great demon king Satan, waiting for his orders. Satan roared and spat out a mist of blood from his mouth. At the same time, the energy around his body converged, and he instantly flew towards the peak of the Demon King fortress. His furious voice suddenly sounded out, "Stabilize the core circle of hell. Kill anyone who dares to cause trouble. Salem is imprisoned in the abyss of hell, and no one is allowed to let her out without my orders. Lucifer will personally supervise her." Satan did not chase after Chi-Yu, because he knew that it was impossible for him to catch up at all. Without the mental lock, even with his strength, it was impossible for him to catch up with a human of similar strength. Send people to chase after him? How could that be possible? Although Chi-Yu was injured, even if Lucifer chased after him, the result would not be good. But even if Lucifer chased after them, there wouldn't be any good results. Satan could no longer afford any more losses. In the end, Satan vomited blood again, but it was not because of Chi-Yu, the determined great demon king of hell. He was really angry. After this incident, he knew that his reputation in hell had suffered an unprecedented blow. Lumiere looked into the distance, her infatuated gaze completely fixed in the direction where Chi-Yu had left. At this moment, even she did not know what she was feeling. From the perspective of hell, she should hate him, but she did not know why. She just couldn't bring herself to hate him. His heroic appearance when he fought against his father, the ruler of hell, was imprinted in the deepest part of his mind. In any case, he had solved the problem of finding a spouse. Imprisoned, his father had been imprisoned because of him. "Chi, will you come again?" Even Lucifer couldn't help but be moved by her sorrowful gaze. He sighed and said, "Your Highness, let's go." His Majesty was also angry for a while. That's why he made such a decision. "I believe he'll release you soon. You and that man are no longer possible. He's already our greatest enemy in hell." Lumiere shook her head and said nothing. Under the escort of Lucifer, she quietly left the highest platform of Demon King Castle. He spat out another mouthful of blood. Kirin concealed Chi-Yu's aura completely and landed on the ground. Chi-Yu's breathing became more intense. In the last head-on collision to stop Satan, his body was once again eroded by Satan's violent, dark energy. At that time, Satan had already seen through Chi-Yu's goal. In order to stop him, He had already erupted with all his energy. Chi-Yu's right arm was now comminuted, and Kirin's arm was still seriously injured in the face of Satan's all-out attack. At the same time, Chi-Yu's body was also filled with raging dark energy, so he had to stop and adjust. Satan was indeed strong. Even with his strength, he still lost in the end. Of course, if the overall effect was considered, he was the one who had the last laugh. However, at this time, Chi-Yu's mood was a little heavy. It was not because of the injury he had suffered. Although the injury was serious, he was famous for his life. It was not easy for him to die, even if he wanted to. With the various thundercloud force in his body, although the dark energy was strong, thundercloud force could dispel his dark attribute. The other kinds of thundercloud force could dispel it with the help of the origin of nature. In addition, with the powerful healing ability of the water thundercloud force and the origin of nature. Even if the injury was more serious, he was confident that he could recover in a short time. The reason why he was in a bad mood was mainly because of Langaire. He knew that the huge loss in the core circle of hell this time would definitely make Satan reach the peak of anger, and he would inevitably vent his anger on Langaire. Now, he just hoped that Langaire would not make things too difficult for Langaire because she was his only daughter. Although Chi-Yu had thought about taking Langaire with him, he knew that it would not be a good result for him and Langaire. Not to mention whether he could take Langaire away in front of Satan. Even if he really let Langaire go with him, he was afraid that she would not be happy. After all, Satan was her father. Moreover, in the near future, he was afraid that there would be an even more intense collision between him and Satan. Rather than feeling more pain because of the deepening relationship between him and Langaire, it was better to just have a one-night marriage. After all, the difference between their camps was too great. Langaire, I hope you can be happy. If hell can stop invading Earth, no matter how tyrannical your father is, I will definitely snatch you back. Chi-Yu's thoughts stopped at this point. His willpower had long since matured through constant tempering. Although emotions were the easiest to cause fluctuations in one's state of mind, the current Chi-Yu was able to control his emotions in the shortest amount of time possible and put all of his focus into healing. After all, this was hell. Without his peak strength, once he encountered a furious Satan, the consequences could be imagined. Chi-Yu knew that Satan would not let him go so easily. At least he was still in hell. Sinan knew how to return to Earth, and Satan even more so. Perhaps he was already looking for his whereabouts. Kirin was invisible on his body, and Chi-Yu completely entered the invisible state of cultivation. The 4 kinds of thundercloud force flowed in his body at the same time. The thundercloud force in the form of spherical lightning was indeed powerful. Bit by bit, it reoccupied the meridians eroded by the dark energy, and the water thundercloud force also played a healing role. The fracture of his right arm was not a big problem, at least for someone like Chi-Yu who had an abnormal recovery ability. Satan sat in the highest room of his Demon King castle, and the anger in his heart had reached its peak. The appearance of Chi-Yu not only made him lose face, at the same time, it also brought a devastating blow to the entire Dark General's clan. At that time, he was able to suppress his anger and agree to the marriage between Langaire and Chi-Yu. He also agreed to let him become the King of Earth because he saw that Chi-Yu could even be compared to the entire Dark General's clan. If he could assist Langaire in the future when his ability reached the void-breaking realm, he could leave this world without worry. But he did not expect Chi-Yu to be so powerful and insidious, and the final outcome turned out to be like this. The destruction of the core circle of hell could be said to have caused a huge gap in his authority. Although nothing would happen with the prestige he had accumulated in the past, but in the hearts of the people of hell, his position would inevitably be greatly affected. Chi-Yu, that human was called Chi-Yu, and he was the most powerful existence among humans. He really was strong. The aura of Satan's whole body fluctuated unstably again, and he clasped his hands in front of his chest. A purple ball of light floated in front of him, and dark energy filled the entire room. The purple ball of light lit up, lit up by the dark energy, and the purple sun in the sky and the purple ball of light in front of him were completely united. A huge amount of dark energy entered Satan's body, healing the injuries of his body. Qi Yu's energy also invaded his body. Regarding the power of Kiran's arm, all he could feel was the word domineering, coupled with anger attacking his heart, although Satan's injuries were not as serious as those of Qi Yu. But it was not good. How many years had it been? Even when he was dealing with his younger brother, Sanaa, he had not been injured. But this time he was injured by the hands of a human. To Satan, this was definitely a great humiliation. Sanaa, thinking of Sanaa, Satan's heart suddenly moved, and his angry heart gradually calmed down. This human was obviously brought here by Langair. This girl actually did not tell him, so it could be seen that she had fallen in love with this human. However, although it was easy for this human to come, it would probably be difficult for him to go back. Judging from his strength, it was impossible for him to return to Earth through other passages, and wasn't the only passage that could allow him to return above the 10,000 Demons Canyon? That was also the passage that he had been waiting for to open. However, wanting to leave from there was easier said than done. He had worked hard for so many years, but he had not succeeded, not to mention that his strength was inferior to his. Since he could not leave hell, then he had a chance to take revenge for everything that he had brought today. Thinking of this, Satan's eyes revealed deep hatred. Towards Qi Yu, he only had the thought of destroying him. No, that's not right. Satan's body suddenly trembled. That human seemed to have very strong lightning energy. Moreover, his own situation was different from the people of hell. He did not have dark energy, which meant that he was not afraid of the atmospheric morality in lightning. Moreover, his own energy seemed to be ball lightning. What if he could withstand lightning? Then it was very likely that he would enter the passage. Thinking of this, Satan's expression suddenly changed. If he let this brat escape from hell, just like that, then where would his face go? Standing up, Satan's expression kept changing. Sanaa was also there. That day was coming. It was also time to solve this problem. And that human, whether or not he knew the way to return to Earth, he would find out sooner or later. Since that was the case, he would definitely go to the 10,000 Demons Canyon. Humph! The door opened, and a servant said respectfully, "Your Majesty, what are your orders?" He obviously knew that Satan was in a bad mood, so his respectful manner was absolutely impeccable. Satan said in a deep voice, "Call Lucifer and the 3 dread lords here. At the same time, order the Burning Legion's 1st Regiment to be ready to move at any time and await my orders." "Yes, Your Majesty." Satan muttered to himself, "Brat, your injuries are even more serious than mine. Even if you know that you can leave the 10,000 Demons Canyon, it definitely won't be that easy. When you reach the 10,000 Demons Canyon, what awaits you will be the arrival of destruction." The Abyss of Demons was a place in hell specially used to imprison criminals. It was absolutely dark here, and only those who had reached a certain level of strength could use their spiritual power to see everything around them. The abyss was 3,000 meters underground, and it was heavily guarded. Anyone who violated Satan's order and didn't deserve to die would be imprisoned in this prison. The Burning Legion's army was guarding outside. After this place was built, no one had been able to escape. At this time, Lucifer was comforting Langair in the Abyss of Demons. He had watched Langair grow up, and for so many years, he had always been Langair's guardian angel. Although he was angry because of Qi Yu, he did not want Langair to be hurt. "Uncle Lucifer, where do you think Qi Yu could go?" Langair's mood had already calmed down a lot. Lucifer said, "He definitely wants to go back to Earth. As for what he will do, I don't know. However, with his ability, I think he should know where the path back to Earth is. However, whether he can go back or not is a big problem. Your Highness, forget about this human. His Majesty will not let him go. You've also seen how great of a loss he brought to our hell today." Langair smiled bitterly and said, "If I could forget him so easily, I would not have brought him to hell." I originally wanted to stay with him in hell. However, he did not descend with me to the Demon King's castle. I did not expect his ethnic background to be so heavy. So many things had happened today. Perhaps Dad would not forgive me anymore. After all, I was the one who brought him here. Lucifer shook his head and said with a smile, "Don't you know His Majesty's temper? You are his only daughter and his only family. How could he not forgive you? It's just that His Majesty is still angry now. After a few days, when his anger subsides, everything will naturally return to normal. There is no overnight hatred between father and daughter." At this moment, a member of the Burning Legion ran over and shouted from 100 meters away from the abyss, "Lord Lucifer, His Majesty invites you." Lucifer was a little surprised and said, "What's going on? Do you know what's going on?" Hearing Satan's order from the Burning Legion, he could not help but feel a little nervous. After all, he had seen Satan's rage very clearly. At this time, he did not want to become the target of Satan's anger. The Burning Legion soldier said, "I don't know what it is. However, His Majesty invited you and the 3 Dread Lords to go together." At the same time, he also mobilized the 1st Regiment of the Legion, saying that they are ready to go. It seems like there is a mission to carry out. Lucifer's heart moved, and he said to himself, "Mission? Could it be that they have found the kid's whereabouts? Oh, I understand. His Majesty must have thought that the kid would have to go to the canyon of 10,000 demons if he wants to leave. This time, he is probably setting up an inescapable trap. Langere, rest well here. I'll go first." As he said that, he floated up and left the abyss with the soldier. As the saying goes, the speaker may not mean it, but the listener is interested. Lucifer's words immediately attracted Langere's attention. Langere's delicate body trembled slightly, but she did not say anything. However, as she lowered her head, her pink eyes revealed a resolute light. Chi Yu's training this time lasted for 2 whole days. After all, he had injured his tendons and bones. Although it only took a few hours for his fractured right arm to recover, it took him a whole day to make the energy flow smoothly again. The dark energy had been completely dispersed, and his various thundercloud force had also returned to normal. As for the 2nd day of training, it was time for him to fully experience the battle with Satan. Every time Chi Yu faced an opponent stronger than him, his potential would be stimulated to a certain extent after he fell into a dead end. Although his current strength had already reached the peak state, it was already very difficult for him to improve further. However, the improvement of thundercloud force made him understand that he still had a good chance of reaching the true 9-cloud level. And the hard work of training now was to lay a good foundation for future improvement. He just did not know where to find the energy to improve the 3 attributes of thundercloud force. He floated up. Chi Yu felt that the energy in his body had become more condensed. It was time to go back. This time, he had been in hell for close to 10 days. He did not know how long it would take to fly back home after returning to Earth. When he thought of his brothers, companions, and confidants, Chi Yu could not help but feel anxious to return home. After all, hell did not belong to him. The feeling here was not very good. He spread his black wings, and in order to not attract attention, he still activated Qilin concealment and flew up into the air. He flew in the direction of the Canyon of Demons. On the way to the core circle of hell, Chi Yu deliberately remembered the location of the Canyon of Demons. That was his only way back. In order to return to Earth as soon as possible, Chi Yu flew at the maximum speed. This time he arrived at the Canyon of Demons. He also had to fulfill his promise to Sanaa to create more trouble for Satan. At that time, even if Satan wanted to invade Earth, he was afraid that his own strength would be consumed in the hell world. For every hellish creature that died, for Earth it would be safer. After a day of flying, under the illumination of the purple sun, Chi Yu could already sense the aura of lightning in the myriad demon valley from afar, even though there was no one to trigger it. Although no one triggered the lightning, This was the place where the dark energy in the entire hell world was the weakest. Perhaps it was for this reason that Sanaa had been trapped for so long, but still had not reached the level of Satan. While flying, Chi-Yu suddenly felt that something was wrong. He had always been cautious, and when flying, he would spread out his spiritual power. This time, the spiritual power suddenly reminded him. Aura, so many auras? How could this be? Could it be that the hellish creatures in the Canyon of Demons escaped? Impossible. Sanaa definitely did not have that kind of strength. Gazing into the distance, Chi-Yu did not see the auras that his mental strength had sensed. An ominous premonition filled his heart as he subconsciously lowered his flying speed and slowly approached the source of the aura. At the same time, his spiritual power began to search for Sanaa's aura. As he got closer and closer to the Canyon of Demons, Chi-Yu's spiritual power also became more and more sensitive. This was the feeling of dark energy. Ah no! Chi-Yu's heart trembled. He stopped flying forward. At the same time, the energy in his body instantly increased. At this time, a cold voice suddenly sounded from all directions. Are you looking for him? With a loud bang, a huge body suddenly appeared on the ground. No, it should be said that it was a corpse. Chi-Yu's pupils shrank. Sanaa, it was Sanaa. There was no longer any signs of life on Sanaa's body. He was heavily thrown to the ground. All the bones in his body seemed to have been broken. His huge eyes were wide open, filled with the light of unwillingness. A huge pressure, a familiar pressure, appeared again. The ground began to change. One by one, the soldiers of the Burning Legion drilled out from the ground. The dark energy fluctuations were constantly increasing. Lucifer and the 3 Dreadlords appeared at the same time, surrounding the invisible Chi-Yu in the middle. There was a distortion in the air, and Satan's huge figure appeared in front of Chi-Yu. Satan held a purple crystal ball in his hand. Layers of strange energy fluctuations came continuously, and the target was the invisible Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu knew that the invisibility effect was useless. He removed the invisibility effect of Kiran. Facing Satan, he knew that this time he had lost. Satan obviously knew that he would come to the Canyon of Demons, so he took advantage of the time when he was healing to set up a trap here. Since they were not in the core circle of hell, the hell creatures could fly. At this time, the strong members of the Burning Legion were flapping their wings or using their innate abilities to fly. They formed an iron bucket-like circle, firmly locking him in. Satan looked at Chi-Yu mockingly. Do you think that you still have a chance to escape? Yes, you are very strong. However, Sanaa is also very strong, but he still died in my hands. Humans are indeed despicable. I didn't think that you could even save him. Unfortunately, you still made a mistake. You didn't think that I would be waiting for you here. While waiting for you, I also killed my younger brother, who is the most likely threat to my position. Chi-Yu, this time, let's see how you can escape from this trap. Chi-Yu floated there without moving. He observed everything around him. Lucifer and the 3 Dreadlords each guarded a direction. This time, the Burning Legion only sent out flying units. They had already surrounded him. His position was completely surrounded. Although they were no match for him, if he wanted to escape from here, he had to face their attacks. As long as they could block him for a while, then Satan's attacks would appear. At least on the surface, he had no chance of escaping now. In 2 days, he met Satan again. Chi-Yu's situation was completely different. For him, it might be a little dramatic. Last time, he had schemed against Satan. This time he was schemed against. It could be said that it was a form of retribution. Chi-Yu, do you know what your best choice is now? This human that he hated so much was already a turtle in a jar. Satan was not in a hurry to make a move. He only looked at Chi-Yu mockingly. Chi-Yu shook his head and said, I don't know. Father-in-law, please teach me. Satan roared angrily. Don't call me father-in-law. I'm not your father-in-law. Your best choice now is to commit suicide. Otherwise, if you fall into my hands, I'll let you know what it means to truly be unable to live. I can't die even if I want to. Satan's warning to Chi-Yu naturally wasn't out of good intentions, even though he was confident that he could kill Chi-Yu in this situation. However, Chi-Yu's strength was so powerful that even his younger brother, Sana, couldn't compare to him. When they destroyed Sana, the Burning Legion had already suffered a certain amount of damage. The three Dreadlords were all injured. After the previous battle in the central square of the core circle of Hell, the strength of the Hell world could be said to be greatly weakened. Satan would rather give up the opportunity to torture Chi-Yu than to lose any more strength in his hands. Shaking his head, Chi-Yu smiled and said, "Perhaps this is the best choice. Unfortunately, this is not the only choice for me. Suicide? That is a sign of cowardice. Even if I die, I will die in battle. Moreover, father-in-law, do you really think that the few of you can stop me from returning home?" Satan snorted coldly and said, "In that case, you still have hope in your heart?" Although Chi-Yu was extremely unwilling, he knew that he could only use his trump card now. Even when he was in a dangerous situation in the central square, he didn't use it. However, in the face of certain death, if he didn't use it now, he might never be able to return to Earth. "Come out, old cow. Your last condition for helping me is to destroy as many hell creatures as possible and cover my return to Earth." Chi-Yu's voice was very calm, just like his aura. He wasn't worried that he would be destroyed by the situation in front of him. Although Satan was strong, could he be stronger than him and Old Cow working together? The energy in the air distorted. Satan was shocked, but Lucifer's expression had already changed. It was obvious that he had already guessed what Chi-Yu wanted to do. A huge body that was 10 meters tall appeared beside Chi-Yu out of thin air. Although their bodies weren't proportionate, the energy ripples brought about by the sudden appearance of this huge body couldn't be compared to anyone else. Even Satan was filled with shock because of his appearance. From a certain perspective, the Bull Demon King's appearance was somewhat similar to Satan. They both had 2 horns on their heads. However, Satan's horns were devil's horns, while the Bull Demon King's horns were bull's horns. The Bull Demon King laughed. "What a comfortable feeling. Is this the so-called hell? I couldn't find a chance to come and take a look in the past. This is a very good opportunity." Old Cow was indeed Old Cow. Facing so many enemies, he wasn't afraid at all, just like Chi-Yu. The huge, 3-pronged heavens supporting trident that was forged from the strange metal on the small planet appeared in Old Cow's hands out of thin air. Powerful energy ripples suddenly burst forth. Lucifer said in a deep voice, "Your Majesty, he was the one who injured me previously. Be careful, he's very strong. He's even stronger than Chi-Yu." Old Cow laughed mischievously and said, "You forget the pain when the scar is healed. You're all a bunch of birdmen." Old Cow had never acted according to common sense. Before he finished speaking, his huge body had already moved. Satan was shocked to discover that his mind power was actually unable to lock onto Old Cow's body. The 3-pronged heavens supporting trident moved horizontally and targeted the 3 Terror Devil Kings. Gray energy rippled like waves. It was a viscous energy aura that didn't seem to be restricted by space. In an instant, it engulfed the bodies of the 3 Terror Devil Kings. Old Cow exploded and let out a bull's roar. His body had already charged in Satan's direction. When the 3 Terror Devil Kings were enveloped by Old Cow's gray energy, their bodies actually spasmed. They didn't even dare to resist. They frantically urged their energy to fly away. Lucifer and Satan faced Old Cow at the same time. Old Cow's 3-pronged heavens supporting trident moved horizontally and stabbed toward Satan's chest. He was about 5 meters shorter than Satan, but his aura wasn't any weaker. While attacking Satan, Old Cow's left hand also slapped towards Lucifer. In the blink of an eye, he had actually attacked the 5 strongest experts in hell. Chi-Yu had already made his move the moment the old bull had started. He was just using Old Cow. Compared to Satan, Chi was actually more worried about Old Cow. Since Old Cow had already chosen his opponent, he would just let him have them. His figure flashed, and Chi had already arrived at the periphery of the Burning Legion. He started a massacre. There was a loud bang, and Satan and Lucifer floated backwards at the same time. Old Cow also tumbled in the air before he stabilized his body. Two dazzling lights burst out of Old Cow's eyes. Ever since he had been born, he had never met a true opponent. This was the first time these two fellows in front of him had actually worked together to force him to retreat. A black long sword had appeared in Satan's hand. The sword was 8 meters long, and there were countless purple patterns carved on it. It was the number 1 demonic weapon in hell. Its name was very simple. It was the same as Satan's title. It was called Demon King. There was a deep mark on the 3-pronged heaven supporting trident in Old Cow's hand. Although it was made of metal from a small planet, it was still inferior to the number 1 demonic weapon in hell. However, Old Cow wasn't at a disadvantage in terms of energy. Chapter 301. The 3 Terror Demon Kings didn't need Satan's command. They pounced towards Chi at the same time. They knew that the Burning Legion couldn't stop Chi. They chose Chi because they were more afraid of facing the powerful Old Bull. The huge 12 wings spread out again. The purple sun shone in the sky. Satan's dark energy instantly expanded to an unprecedented level under this stimulation. The energy in his body completely exploded. Every beat produced a powerful energy wave. The Bull Demon King's huge eyes revealed a trace of surprise. He raised his head and looked at the purple sun in the sky. He smiled. The strange smile caused the evil aura around his body to suddenly expand. He roared towards the sky. The purple sun that was originally only covering Satan actually split half of its light to cover the Bull Demon King. His already huge body expanded again under the purple sun's light. Evil and tyrannical. That was evil and tyrannical. Even when facing Lucifer and Satan, Old Bull's energy aura actually gained the upper hand. Satan's heart trembled. What kind of power was this? Not only did he and Lucifer not suppress the opponent, but they also increased the opponent's strength. At this moment, there was only one feeling in his heart, and that was fear. As soon as Chi entered the Burning Legion's camp, he brought about a huge disaster. He was like a huge porcupine. His entire body emitted tyrannical lightning. The Burning Legion was in front of him. They were like paper. Every time he punched, there would be a ball of lightning exploding. Figures flew in the sky, and charred bodies were sent flying. The 3 Terror Demon Kings chased after him. However, Chi-Yu's figure was too strange. He kept flashing and didn't give the 3 Terror Demon Kings any chance to get close. He kept shuttling through the Burning Legion. None of them could withstand his attacks. Facing the strong members of the Burning Legion, they could only be killed. Fear also appeared in Chi-Yu's heart. Old Bull had evolved. This was the only feeling he had. Originally, he wanted to borrow Satan's strength to weaken Old Bull's strength. He even wanted to kill Old Bull here. However, Old Bull's strength had actually increased again. Against the strongest team in hell, he actually didn't show any weakness. Moreover, his own energy had also evolved at this time. Yes, why didn't he realize that the darkness energy in the infernal realm was also a great tonic for him? It was too late for regrets. You would not regret it either. If it wasn't for the Old Cow, he would be the one facing all the experts in hell. All he could do was kill. The trident in the Old Bull's hand moved again. A tyrannical collision. In the face of Satan's Demon King's sword and Lucifer's strength, the 3 huge figures constantly flickered in the air, and every time they did so, an incomparably tyrannical energy fluctuation would erupt. The more Lucifer and Satan fought, the more shocked they became. Old Ox was also secretly nervous, although he had the upper hand for now. But after all, Lucifer and Satan were super powerhouses who had roamed hell for countless years. Under their alliance, Even Old Cow would find it extremely difficult to take advantage of them. In particular, the Demon King's sword in Satan's hands had already left one deep mark after another on his heaven-supporting trident. Boom! Lucifer's body was suddenly sent flying by Old Cow. He flew far away like a home run. Meanwhile, Satan also took this opportunity to brazenly attack the trident in Old Cow's hand. The energy of the two peerless powerhouses instantly erupted and produced an energy whirlpool. At the same time, he flew back. The trident in Old Cow's hand had already been broken. His eyes revealed a trace of unwillingness as he coldly snorted. "You're the great Demon King? You don't look like much. If it wasn't for the fact that my weapon is inferior to yours, you might not have the upper hand in front of me." As he spoke, Old Cow put away the trident. His huge body, which had already expanded to nearly 20 meters, floated there. He was even more majestic than a mountain. A bloody mark appeared on his chest. However, Old Cow's skin was really tough. Even the Demon King's sword could not penetrate deep into it. Satan did not make a sound. He had to admit that what Old Cow said was the truth. If Old Cow also had a weapon that was similar to the Demon King's sword, even if he and Lucifer worked together, they would not be able to defeat him. Just as Satan was about to follow up with another attack, he suddenly felt his entire body become heavy. It was as if 3 large mountains had suddenly pressed down on him. His body, which was originally in midair, suddenly sank and fell towards the ground in the blink of an eye. Gravity control was one of Old Cow's most proficient abilities. When he used his full strength, Satan, who was caught off guard, could not help but suffer a great loss. Old Cow's huge body moved. Lucifer was sent flying, and Satan suddenly fell rapidly. The opponent in front of him had already completely disappeared. With a powerful bull's roar, a layer of red light burst forth from Old Cow's body. It was a death ray. It suddenly spread out in the shape of a fan. At least a third of the Burning Legion was killed by this unstoppable death ray. A huge gap instantly appeared in the originally firm encirclement. Chi-Yu happened to explode at the same time. The thundercloud force once again displayed the scene of the god of thunder tearing through the sky. With his body as the center, blue light exploded in a distorted manner. Not only did it send the 3 dreadlords flying, but it also destroyed a large number of Burning Legion soldiers. Old Cow shouted, "Chi-Yu, it's time to go." Although he was powerful, he had been injured by Satan in order to severely injure Lucifer. After all, dark energy was not that easy to deal with. Satan's power was not much weaker than his. Hence, Old Cow had used up a large amount of energy in the short fight. After all, this was hell, a place that belonged to Satan. If they continued fighting for a long time, the final outcome would still be him and Chi-Yu being destroyed. His huge body suddenly pounced forward. Gravity control caused the Burning Legion in front of him to fall like meteorites, crashing towards Satan, who was pouncing towards him. Chi-Yu and Old Cow charged forward at almost the same time. Their bodies passed by each other. Chi-Yu exploded with the energy of Kirin. Massive energy undulations instantly increased to the limit. The black and silver figures separated at lightning speed. At this moment, Old Cow's body once again exploded with the death ray. The light was completely contained and passed by the black and silver figures. The black and silver figures merged into one again, while Old Cow appeared 100 meters behind Chi-Yu. At the place where they had passed by, the bodies of the 3 dreadlords had completely frozen. Amidst the energy fluctuations, they were like broken porcelain, and fine cracks gradually appeared on their bodies. When Satan rushed over, their bodies shattered. Their bodies just happened to shatter, completely shattering. 3 clouds of blood, mist exploded in the air. Chi-Yu let out a long roar. Old Cow's body had already fused back into his body. They faced the powerful enemies one after the other. In addition, Old Cow had used up a lot of his energy. It was the same for Chi-Yu. In particular, when the 2 of them went all out to kill the 3 dreadlords, He even used the doppelganger domain, which consumed the most energy. At this moment, although Satan was the only one left in the enemy's main force, it was time for Chi-Yu and Old Cow to leave. After all, Satan's reinforcements were endless. Meanwhile, Chi-Yu still had to face the surging ball of lightning in mid-air. Hell was not a place to stay for long. Satan was not easy to deal with either. The 5 elements divine dragon once again took up the heavy responsibility of bringing up the rear. Satan did not chase after them. He floated in midair, and his eyes were filled with confusion. He never expected that his meticulously planned attack would end in such a manner. Chi-Yu's body was in the midst of the rumbling thunder. He had already been thrown into the sky above the valley of demons, and was engulfed by the ball of lightning that suddenly appeared. Lucifer returned to Satan's side. When he saw Satan's demon king sword annihilating the 5 elements divine dragons, his eyes flickered with astonishment. Old Bull's home run just now had already injured his foundation. It would definitely take more than a day or 2 for him to recover. "Your Majesty," Lucifer said with difficulty. Satan raised his hand. "You don't have to say anything else. It seems like our power is indeed insufficient to conquer the earth. When we return, immediately contact the Netherworld King Hades. I agree to cooperate with him. I am willing to become the master of the earth together with him." Satan was probably the only one who could remain calm in such a situation. The death of the 3 dreadlords had greatly agitated the king of hell. Old Cow's valiance had filled him with a sense of crisis. That was an existence that was above him. However, the energy on this monster's body was even more evil than his. What kind of creature was he exactly? Why was he together with Chi-Yu? Satan kept thinking about it. Although he had suffered great losses this time, it also allowed him to clearly see what the strongest power on earth was. He started to plan in his heart. After all, this was hell. Everything could still be salvaged. If he had suffered such a crushing defeat on earth, it would probably be impossible for him to retreat. Perhaps he was consoling himself. However, at least at this moment, the anger in Satan's heart had disappeared. As he looked at the ball of lightning that was getting stronger, he actually prayed for the first time in his life. He prayed that Chi-Yu would truly be engulfed by the ball of lightning, even though he knew that this situation was almost impossible. Otherwise, Chi-Yu would not have rashly entered the lightning. Lumiere silently appeared beside Satan. She was holding her devil's kiss in her hand. She had seen everything that had just happened. When Chi-Yu was intercepted, she had already arrived at the right time. As the princess of hell, when there was no Lucifer guarding her, who could stop this daughter of Satan? She originally wanted to save Chi-Yu. She was even willing to use her own life to threaten her father to let Chi-Yu go. However, she had witnessed such a scene. She was shocked, absolutely shocked. "Father, it's all my fault. I brought disaster to hell." The devil's kiss in Lumiere's hand shone with a cold light. She quietly placed it on her neck. She knew that it was impossible for her and Chi-Yu to be together. Chi-Yu had brought such a disaster to Earth. How could her father allow him to be with her? Moreover, he already had so many female confidants, so the 2 of them could only be husband and wife for one night. Lumiere's heart was filled with despair. Satan turned around and looked at Lumiere calmly. He said in a low voice, "Girl, what are you doing?" Tears flowed down Lumiere's cheeks as she spoke in a mournful voice. "Father, hell has suffered such a great loss this time. Someone must stand up and bear the responsibility. Although I am your daughter, for the sake of hell's future, I am willing to bear everything. I will use my life and blood to wash away the humiliation you have suffered." Looking at Lumiere, Satan's calm gaze gradually became gentler. After all, this was his only daughter. Satan was already dead. He had personally killed him. If he had not used up some energy to kill Satan, perhaps the situation would have been different. Everything had already happened. As the Lord of Hell, he could only face it calmly in order to wash away the humiliation in the next battle. He could not sacrifice his daughter's life. Langair's body instantly froze. She was surrounded by a huge amount of dark energy. Satan waved his hand, and the devil's kiss was already in his hand. He said angrily, "Nonsense. Only I can wash away the humiliation I have suffered. It has nothing to do with you. I've already lost my loyal subordinates and rebellious brothers. Do you want me to lose my only daughter as well?" At the end of his words, Satan's eyes shone with the light of a loving father. The restraints on Langair's body disappeared. Her tears flowed even more violently. She let out a cry and threw herself into her father's cold embrace. It was as if she wanted to vent all the pain in her heart through her tears. Satan gently stroked Langair's beautiful long hair. The light in his eyes became even gentler. "All right, it's all in the past. Don't cry. Don't worry, the human kid won't die. Otherwise, why would he dare to rush into the range of the lightning ball? Actually, from a certain point of view, your foresight is much better than mine. It is because of his appearance that I know that humans can reach such a powerful level. However, the next time we meet, there must be a resolution between him and me. Don't cry. You are my daughter, Satan. You must be strong. Now that the 3 dreadlords are dead and the Burning Legion has suffered a certain amount of damage, you must be strong. When I lead the Burning Legion's infernal army to sweep across the human world, you and Lucifer will be my most capable helpers." You really wouldn't die. He knew that from the moment he rushed into the range of the lightning ball. In order to conserve energy, Yu directly used the undying domain. As the saying goes, walking among thousands of flowers, not a single one will touch you. No matter how ferocious the lightning ball's attack was, it couldn't do anything to the undying domain. Seeing the surging thunder attribute energy explode on his body without causing him any harm, Yu couldn't help but deepen his understanding of the Kong Tong seal. As expected of one of the 10 great divine weapons, with it his strength had imperceptibly increased by a large chunk, and his chances of survival had also increased. If only the Xianyuan sword was still by his side. In that case, with the situation just now where they were evenly matched, maybe he and the Bull Demon King could join forces and kill Satan. A peerless divine weapon could often become the key to the entire battle. His body shot straight up into the air. The thundercloud force was the best way to increase his speed. Yu's body continued to rise in the illusory air, rising into the sky. Although the undying domain consumed a lot of his energy, it was also because of the undying domain that he could fly under the enormous pressure of the overwhelming righteousness of heaven and earth. When Yu's energy had dropped to a dangerous level, his body suddenly became light, and the energy of the lightning ball's bombardment disappeared at the same time. Heaving a huge sigh of relief, Yu knew that he had left the range of the lightning ball. The energy in his body revolved. He dared not waste even a second, and once again increased his speed, using the last of his energy to shoot his body into the sky. The surrounding purple sky began to distort, causing Yu to see a giant circular ring. It was impossible to determine the diameter of the giant ring, but by the time Yu discovered its existence, the surrounding space had already been completely distorted. Then a strong suction suddenly appeared, wrapped around his body, and directly drilled into an unknown world. At this time, Yu's energy was finally exhausted, and the distorted energy around him was much stronger than what he experienced when he came to the Hell World. However, before Yu could feel any discomfort, the Bull Demon King's domineering evil aura had automatically spread, enveloping Yu's body and completely blocking the distorted energy outside. Life and death domain. Yu's life was equivalent to the Bull Demon King's. How could he not protect him? Yu. Old Bull's deep voice rang in Yu's spiritual world. "I know," Yu replied calmly. At this moment, he was not overly excited because he could escape from the Hell World. Instead, his heart was slightly heavy. The Bull Demon King said indifferently, "It's good that you know. When you return, your body will recover. It's time for you to fulfill your promise to me. If I can find Chiyu, you don't have to do anything, I will kill him. When that time comes, I can even do one more thing for you, and it will not be in vain that we are fated to be together. Chiyu's heart moved, and he thought of something. However, he knew that even if his judgment was correct, he would not be able to stop it. He would not be able to stop it from happening. Currently, the relationship between him and Old Bull was in a delicate state. Old Bull was restricted by the life and death domain. However, once Old Bull exploded without caring about anything, it was very likely that he would kill his companions. That was an outcome that Chiyu could not accept. No matter if it was him or Old Bull, they were already very familiar with each other after spending so much time together. Old Bull naturally knew his weakness. He also knew that unless it was a last resort, Old Bull would definitely not choose to do that. Old Cow had already fulfilled his promise to him, so he had no choice but to fulfill his promise to Old Cow. As the saying went, the calm before the storm. Everything did not end with Chiyu's departure from the Hell World. Instead, it was just the beginning. Dragon, field, courtyard. Ryue threw the phone in her hand onto the sofa angrily and muttered to herself, "This bastard. I still can't contact him. He said he would be back in 10 days. However, half a month has passed. There is no news at all. Doesn't he know that everyone is worried about him? That's right. When he comes back this time, we definitely cannot let him off easily." Ming Ming clenched her fist and gestured angrily. Shangbing giggled and said, "Forget it. It's all bark and no bite. When he really comes back, I'm afraid that you will forget everything and directly jump into his embrace." Ruyu and Ming Ming looked at each other and blushed at the same time. Snow Girl stood beside Ryue and gently squeezed Ryue's shoulder. She smiled and said, "Actually, you should understand him. He has too many burdens on his shoulders. Ever since he possessed great power, when had he ever had a day of peace and stability? He is already tired. I think that if he was not held back by something, he would have returned long ago." Ming Ming smiled and said, "Snow Girl is still soft-hearted. I really don't know if I should call you Snow Girl or Fire Girl." Snow Girl blushed and said, "Ming Ming, you are making fun of me." "Humph, when Chiyu comes back, I will complain to him. If I am not wrong, you still seem to be a virgin. Why don't we let Chiyu—" "Ah, you stupid girl, how can you say such words? See if I can let you go." Ming Ming's figure flashed, and she had already pounced on Snow Girl. Snow Girl fluttered and dodged while laughing. Her movements were extremely fast. Even if Ming Ming's strength was above hers, it was still very difficult to catch her. Ryue looked at them helplessly and shook her head subconsciously. She said, "All right, stop fooling around. Snow Girl, how is the situation with Kirin Group?" Snow Girl grabbed Ming Ming's hands and said, "There is no problem with the group. Although Chiyu did not come back, we have gone to the ancient behemoth period twice and brought back a large number of fruits. Now the group's business is completely on the right track and has entered the international market. According to Chiyu's original idea, we set a super high price for Kirin Group's products in the international market. However, there are really a lot of rich people in foreign countries. Even with such high prices, there is often a shortage of goods. Now, the company's capital chain is fully operational. Uncle Chi sent someone to join our group. He's an expert in financial management. Now he's a financial expert. Now, the company's rich funds have been invested in the capital market. The qualifications of the entire group have formed a virtuous cycle. When Chiyu comes back, I will ask him if we are listed. If we are listed, I am afraid the total value of our company's assets can develop to the scale of nearly $5 billion. Ryue exclaimed, "It has developed to this extent? No wonder monopolies are always the most profitable. Snow Girl, it has been hard on you." Snow Girl giggled and said, "It's not hard at all. Anyway, Kirin Group belongs to all of us. Sister Ryue, why don't you hand over the company to Brother Ming Xiao and come over to help. I will give you the position of general manager. With you, the company will definitely develop faster and better." Ruyue smiled bitterly and shook her head. She said, "If I run away, brother will tear me apart. If he goes to mom and dad and cries, I will be in big trouble. You and Sister Yueguan are enough for Kirin Group. Anyway, we have money now. You can also recruit more elites to join the group. Oh, right. Last time you went back to the ancient behemoth period, did you bring Miss Xiao Lu back? Qi Yu is really too much. He sent her there and didn't care. I'm afraid Brother Hummer will complain to us later." Snow Girl shook her head with a smile and said, "Don't worry, Sister Riyue. Brother Hummer won't complain. Last time he went with me to the ancient behemoth period. It's not that we don't want to bring Miss Xiao Lu back, but she didn't intend to come back at all. She has fallen in love with the environment there and said that only the life there is the most suitable for her. Everything is so comfortable and peaceful. That kind of environment has already conquered her heart. She said she will stay for a while. She will come back when the company is ready to shoot the next season's advertisement." Ruyue said, "That's good. There is no problem with the group. Everything will be much easier." Ming Ming turned around and came behind Snow Girl. She put her hands around Snow Girl's waist and leaned on her with a smile. "How can there be a problem with the group? This time we helped the world solve the problem of the asteroids. Although under Qi Yu's proposal, the country did not announce our identity. But now the country is sparing no effort in supporting our group. What's more, we earn more money from foreigners. Sister Ruyue, I don't want to go to school anymore. How about I join Kirin Group? Snow Girl, how about I be your secretary?" Snow Girl giggled and said, "No. You'd better wait to be Qi Yu's secretary. If that's the case, his boss who is absent from work every day might get a perfect attendance award." "You're making fun of me." Ming Ming lightly scratched Snow Girl's waist, causing Snow Girl to let out a string of bell-like laughter. Seeing them laughing and joking around, Ruyue couldn't help but feel a lot less worried. Although they only had one lover, perhaps because they had experienced life and death together, there was no estrangement between them. The Dragon Realm courtyard had become their common home. They also had a tacit understanding and never mentioned marrying Qiyu. They were happy and harmonious with each other. If it weren't for the shadow of Qiyu's absence, they would probably be happier. Ming Ming was right. Since returning from the last mission, whether it was Ruyue's Dragon Field Group or Qiyu's Kirin Group, they had all been taken care of by the country. Privately, comprehensive tax exemption had brought huge benefits to the two groups. Everyone who participated in that mission received the country's Bauhinia Medal, and the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors, led by Ruyue, received the same Diamond Guardian Medal treatment as Qiyu. Ming Ming felt that it was useless, so she gave her Diamond Guardian Medal to Snow Girl. The leaders of the two major groups had such items on them. At the very least, any problem at the national level could be easily solved. It was difficult for the group not to develop smoothly. The Zodiac Guardian Warriors all went back to rest. They really needed some time to adjust. The training during the ancient behemoth period, coupled with the near-death experience during the asteroid mission. Everyone had different degrees of mental fatigue. After all, everyone should have their own lives. Now, in the Dragon Field courtyard, there were only a few girls and the pig Zodiac warrior, Guanjing, who was too lazy to go home. Everyone else had gone home to rest. Even the 12 Zodiac warriors were temporarily dismissed by Ruyue to go back to cultivate. Now, the Dragon Field courtyard had removed all the security systems. The reason was very simple. In the spacious courtyard outside the Dragon Field courtyard, a big golden bird was lazily basking in the sun every day. With it around, anyone who dared to come to the Dragon Field courtyard would probably not even be left with dregs. Originally, Snow Girl wanted to bring Little Pung back when they went back to the ancient behemoth period, but Little Pung stubbornly chose not to go home. He didn't say the reason, but in fact there was only one reason why he chose to stay, and that was because of Chiyu. The agreement between the two of them was nothing. However, through his contact with Chiyu, little Peng encountered many things that he had never encountered before. He never thought that when a person's life was in danger, he would not forget to help others escape from danger, and that such a situation would happen to him. At the last moment, in order not to implicate him, Chiyu even distracted himself by canceling the contract between them and did not let his companions help him. Although Chiyu did all of this subconsciously, his behavior had deeply shocked little Peng. Although little Peng was a dire beast, dire beasts also had feelings. Chiyu had truly obtained his approval. Of course, there was another reason why little Peng didn't leave. After all, in this human world, there were still more than 100 of his clansmen. As the son of the great Peng Wisdom King, he had to be responsible for his clansmen. Even if he wanted to go back, it was definitely not now. Therefore, little Peng stayed. On the surface, he was abiding by his promise with Chiyu, but now little Peng truly admitted that he was Chiyu's order, even if Chiyu wasn't there. Chapter 302. Snow Girl smiled. Sister Ryue, why don't we go out for a walk? It's not good to be cooped up in the courtyard every day. Don't you find it annoying to go home and train apart from work? Ryue smiled. That doesn't sound like something you would say. You used to be even more reluctant to leave the house than me. Snow Girl sighed. I don't know why either. Maybe it's because Chiyu changed my personality. How about it, sisters? Are you interested in going out for a walk? Shangbing shook her head and laughed. I'm not going. I definitely won't go. Going out with you guys makes me feel inferior. Besides, don't you think that if we appear in the same place at the same time, it will inevitably cause unnecessary impulses? I remember there were a few talent scouts looking for you on the street, Snow Girl. Indeed, with their looks and figures, even one of them walking on the street would become the focus of attention. If so many of them appeared at the same time, who knew what kind of commotion it would cause? At this moment, the phone rang. Ryue grabbed the phone almost immediately. On the surface, she was angry that Chiyu didn't return on time, but in fact, she was more anxious than anyone else. Ignoring the mocking gazes of her sisters, Ryue answered the call and asked, "Who is it?" Her somewhat expectant expression quickly returned to normal. "Christy, it's you. How are you?" "Chiyu?" "Chiyu hasn't returned yet. I think he'll be back soon. When he returns, I'll ask him to call you." "All right. That's all for now." After hanging up the phone, Ryue couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. She had returned to England and brought her parents back to England according to the method Chiyu taught her. With the cooperation between Chiyu and the Dark Parliament, her strength had reached the level of the chairman of the Dark Parliament. In addition, her own strength had already reached the level of the chairman of the Dark Council. Now, in the Dark Council, her position was absolutely transcendent. The vampire race had gradually become an indispensable and powerful force in the Dark Parliament. After all, the last time she used the primordial blood, she created a huge batch of experts. Just now, someone said that he wanted to do something to Chiyu, but then the phone rang. Even his soul was hooked away. Haha. Shangbing let out a long laugh and did not wait for Ryue to react. He turned around and ran outside. She, who often exercised, would feel uncomfortable if she didn't move her body every day. Ryue didn't chase after Shangbing. She let her float to the gate and rush out. "Ah!" Shangbing exclaimed. Then her voice was cut off. Although they quarreled, the 5 women had already formed a deep friendship. Ming Ming, Ryue, Snow Girl, and the Plant Soul. Almost at the same time, he rushed out and was the first to reach the door. It was a Plant Soul that rarely spoke. However, they were immediately stunned because Shangbing's voice was cut off in front of them. As soon as Shangbing stepped out of the door, she immediately bumped into a tall figure. Fortunately, she reacted quickly and used her body to support the other party. However, at the next moment, her slender and delicate body was already tightly embraced by the other party. "It's him. He's back." Chi Yu smiled at the 5 women in front of him. Hi, I'm back. Why were you all immobilized? He looked much more mature than when he was on the asteroid mission. He was still dressed in black, but his hair had become crystal silver. He was tall and had a familiar aura. That's right, their man was back. You still know how to come back. Apart from Shangbing, who was in Chi Yu's arms, the 4 women, including the plant soul, shouted in unison. Chi Yu was shocked. Before he could react, the 4 women had pounced on him. They used all sorts of tricks at the same time. Chi Yu faced them head-on and was instantly attacked indiscriminately. No, spare me, he screamed. Before he could enter the door, Chi Yu was thrown out by the 4 women. Chi Yu looked at the 5 women standing in front of the door. Shangbing had also escaped from Chi Yu's embrace when he was thrown out. They were like the 5 tigers. Ruyue stood in the middle. They all glared at him fiercely. No matter how powerful Chi Yu was, he could not help but feel uneasy at this moment. He asked tentatively, "Is there a coup in the family?" The 5 women looked at him, and their expressions suddenly became strange. Chi Yu looked really disheveled. There were footprints all over his body. His hair was also messy. Even a few buttons on his shirt had fallen off. The funniest thing was that the zipper on his pants had been pulled open, revealing the black underwear inside. But he did not realize it himself. Ha ha! Almost at the same time, the 5 women burst into laughter. Looking at Chi Yu, they laughed so hard that they could not straighten their backs. Chi Yu was stunned for a moment. When he lowered his head to look, he discovered the miserable state of his body and hurriedly began to tidy himself up. However, he was only halfway through his actions when he subconsciously stopped. He had already seen that although the 5 girls were smiling, tears were already flowing down their faces. This separation was different from the previous ones. It could be said that it was a true separation of life and death. After Chi Yu used the Big Dipper technique to cause the asteroid to deviate and disappear, everyone thought that he was dead. Even the 5 women were just lying to themselves. In less than a month, the 5 women did not know how many times they had been tortured in their hearts. Now he was finally back. He was alive. Tears of joy mixed with tears. What kind of feeling was that? I'm sorry. Chi Yu slowly walked to the side of the 5 women and opened his broad arms. However, he found that his arms were still a little short. It was impossible for him to hold all 5 women in his arms. For a moment he stood there in a daze, looking at this and that, not knowing what to say. Today, your punishment is to sleep on the lawn. Ruyue was the first to speak. Chi Yu smiled bitterly and nodded. Fine, fine. I admit it. I deserve to be punished. Ruyue snorted. Then do you know why we punished you? Chi Yu was stunned. It's because I went on an adventure, right? Ruyue shook her head. No, it's because you went on an adventure without us. If you had let us go with you at that time, why would we be so worried? How could you abandon us at that time? Did you think that we were afraid of death? That you were the only hero? Ah. Chi Yu was speechless by Ryue's words. Yako was speechless, but a smile appeared on his face again, although he didn't say anything. However, if he had to choose again, he would do the same. Even if the result was death, it would not change. Snow Girl stuck out her tongue at Chi Yu. The plant soul, on the other hand, showed a helpless expression on its face. Shangbing looked at Chi Yu fiercely, but there was gentleness in the fierceness. As for Ruyue and Mingming, although their faces were solemn, their hearts had already softened. I accept the punishment. Then I will wait for you to forgive me on the lawn. Chi Yu smiled and took a few steps back. He walked to Little Peng's side. Little Peng's big head came over and gently rubbed Chi Yu's body a few times. His big eyes were full of smiles, although he didn't say anything. But the excitement emanating from his body had explained everything. Master was back. His master was finally back. Of course, when the master and the mistress had a conflict, little Peng wisely chose not to participate. He quietly raised his right wing and covered his eyes, as if to tell Chiyu, I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything. With his huge body making such an action, it was as comical as it could be. Chiyu shook his head helplessly. It's over, I can only fight alone. However, his ears pricked up, looking at Ryue and the others, and eavesdropping on their conversation. Ming Ming leaned against Ryue's ear and whispered, Sister Ryue, are you really going to punish him? He looks quite pitiful. It wasn't easy for him to come back. He must be very tired. Ryue hesitated and said, But if we forgive him so easily this time, won't he do it again next time? Don't worry, with his body he won't be tired. This time we must make him remember. Shangbing giggled and said, As long as you can bear it, I have no problem. The plant soul did not establish any relationship with Chiyu. In her own opinion, her position was the lowest. Although she was anxious, she did not dare to say anything, afraid that it would cause the 4 girls to misunderstand. Snow Girl had always been obedient. Looking at Ryue, although she did not say anything, her eyes were already filled with anxiety. Just as they were hesitating, Chiyu took out his phone from somewhere and placed it by his ear. He put on an act and said, Dad, is that you? Yes, I'm back. Okay, I'll go over to eat now. I miss you, Mom, and Sister too. And I'll be there right away. As he spoke, he hung up the phone, turned around and patted little Peng's head and said, Brother, do you want to continue basking in the sun here, or do you want to go eat a big meal with me? Little Peng hurriedly lifted the wings that covered his eyes. Eat, I want to eat a big meal. You're not allowed to go. Ryue and the other girls were anxious. In just an instant, they surrounded Chiyu. He had finally come back, and now he had to leave again. Although he was going to his parents' place, if something happened on the way and he sneaked away again, how could they catch him? Chiyu found it funny, but on the surface he did not show it. He said with grievance, I haven't eaten for more than half a month. You can't let me eat grass on the lawn, right? Can't I go to Mom and Dad's place for a free meal? Hearing that Chiyu had not eaten for more than half a month, the last line of defense of the 5 girls finally collapsed. In front of a ruffian like Chiyu, their attack was really too weak. Ryue snorted and got close to Chiyu. She pinched his waist with her right hand without hiding it. Take us with you. No one can be missing. From now on, your punishment will change. You have to be under our supervision at all times. Chiyu laughed and carried Ryue up. Okay, no problem. It's just supervision. Okay, then you guys can supervise me together tonight. Once he said that, the plant soul was the first to run away. However, just as she turned to run, she was pulled back by Shangbing. She could only hide beside Shangbing with a blushing face. Little Peng returned to the Kongtong seal at the right time. The familiar feeling of energy made him feel so comfortable that he almost moaned. Looking at the 5 girls in front of him, Chiyu comforted them one after another. After a long period of comforting, they finally stopped crying and smiled. Tell me, what happened that day? Tell me the truth. Otherwise, I won't let you go to bed tonight. Ming Ming stared fiercely at Chiyu and said. However, as soon as she said that, she realized that she had said something wrong. Sure enough, Chiyu smiled wickedly. So if I tell you the truth, I can go to bed with you tonight? You're so annoying. In your dreams. Ming Ming glanced at the girls who were watching the show, but she did not show any weakness and puffed out her chest. Chiyu said, This time, I've really taken a trip to hell. I had a fight with Satan, and it ended in a draw. Then I came back to pull it off. The 5 girls were still waiting for him to continue, but after waiting for a long time, they saw that Chiyu had no intention of continuing. That's it, Ryu asked. From what they heard, when Chiyu said that he went to hell, he was referring to the asteroid incident. However, they did not know that he really went to hell and really fought with Satan. Chiyu shrugged and said, That's not enough, Ryue snorted and said, Of course not. Tell me the details. We want to know what you were doing when you were missing for so many days. Did you meet a beautiful woman and forget about your duties? Chi-Yu smiled bitterly and said, I'm innocent. My wives. Am I that kind of person? Yes, tell me. Okay, I'll tell you, I'll be honest. Chi-Yu then told them how he survived on the asteroid and how he returned to Earth with the help of the Bull Demon King. Then how he was brought to Hell by Lunger and what happened in Hell in detail. Of course, he said that he and Lunger's one-night stand was to thank the Covenant of Darkness for their help. After listening to Chi-Yu, the 5 girls could not help but feel a thrill. However, when Ryue saw that Chi-Yu's eyes were flickering, she could not help but ask, You're not lying to us? When you called us, if you didn't know that you were going to Hell, why did you tell us that you would be back in 10 days? Chi-Yu, at that time, my strength had not fully recovered. My body was also very weak, and it was far from here. At that time, I was in a sorry state. I didn't even have money to buy food. Fortunately, I met Shueiwa. With her help, I was able to come back. Later, I thought that France was quite close to Germany anyway, so I might as well go to the Covenant of Darkness to thank them. That's why what happened after that happened. Originally, I wanted to come back in advance to give you a surprise. Who knew that I would go to Hell? The fierceness in Ming Ming's eyes had long turned into gentleness. She asked with concern, Satan didn't do anything to you, right? How is your body now? You haven't eaten for so many days. Can you still hold on? Hitting the snake with the stick had always been one of the best tricks of a ruffian. Chi-Yu had been a ruffian for many years, so he naturally knew how to do it. Before Ming Ming finished speaking, his body immediately swayed, and his feet became a lot weaker. His originally normal face was skillfully controlled by him to become a little pale. On the surface, he reluctantly said, It's nothing. I won't die even if I starve for more than 10 days. Ming Ming was shocked by Chi-Yu's sudden change. She quickly went forward to support him and transferred her energy into his body. She hurriedly said, Sister Ria, forget it. Let's not interrogate him for now. Let him quickly go back to his room to rest. We can talk about everything later, okay? Chi-Yu's tricks could only fool the 3 pure girls like Ming Ming, the Plant Soul, and Snow Girl. Shang Bing and Ryue immediately saw the flaw in it, but seeing the pleading looks of Ming Ming and the other 2, they simply went along with it. Ryue nodded and went forward to support Chi-Yu's other arm. She said, Then let's go back to our room first. As she said that, she forcefully pinched Chi-Yu's fleshy area, causing Chi-Yu to grimace in pain. It felt so good to be home. As soon as they entered the living room, Chi-Yu fell comfortably on the sofa. As long as they entered the door, everything would be much easier to talk about. Of course, he also understood that the 5 girls could not really blame him. It was just because of the fear of being separated by death that they had to vent. Ming Ming looked at Chi-Yu's comfortable appearance. Only then did she realize that she had been tricked. Chi-Yu hurriedly said, Don't hit me. We can talk about it. Don't be so violent, okay? I really haven't eaten for more than 10 days. I'm really weak, but I can still hold on. Ryue said in annoyance, Were you pretending on the phone just now? Chi-Yu did not answer and only chuckled. The 5 girls looked at each other and shouted, Beat him up! With a loud shout, Beat him up! 5 graceful bodies pounced on Chi-Yu almost at the same time. Screams continuously came out from the Dragon Field courtyard. Chi-Yu really wanted to shout, I'm so pitiful. However, he already felt a little overwhelmed when he used his breast-grabbing dragon claw at this time. There was not a single cloud in the dark blue sky. The warm sunlight shone on the earth, and the clear light seemed to be no longer affected by pollution. It was already spring. Under the warm sunlight, everything on the earth gradually recovered, and spring could be seen everywhere. The gate of the Dragon Field courtyard opened, and a long Cadillac limousine drove out from inside. The black car exuded a noble and elegant temperament under the sunlight, just like a gentleman, quietly walking out of the dragon field. It headed in the direction of the airport road. After 2 hours of torture, Chiyu finally obtained the forgiveness of the 5 girls. However, his body was already riddled with wounds. In fact, the torture should have ended in an hour. However, just as the torture ended, the 5 girls who stopped to catch their breath were surprised to find that there were 5 special things in Chiyu's hands. And those things seemed to be the special things that were used to bind their breasts. The torture time instantly doubled. Chiyu's screams also became more mournful. "Why are you all so far away from me? Haven't I already obtained your forgiveness?" Chiyu looked at the 5 girls sitting together and asked carefully, "You have forgiven me for what happened last time. But what about what you did just now? You pervert." Ming Ming said angrily and embarrassedly, in front of Chiyu's breast-grabbing hand, "Ryue and Snow Girl were a bit better. After all, they had already had intimate relations with Chiyu, and Shangbing's ability to accept has always been very strong, so she did not have much of a reaction. However, Ming Ming and the Plant Soul girls were extremely embarrassed. After all, not only were they virgins, but they also had too little contact with affairs between men and women. Although Chiyu's big hands that were full of electricity gave them a feeling they had never felt before, it also brought them endless embarrassment. Chiyu said calmly, "How do you know my nickname?" Shangbing pretended to be surprised. "Oh, your nickname is Pervert. Good. I'll have to ask Uncle and Auntie later if they gave you this name." There's no need." Chiyu was immediately convinced. After finally coming back and being tortured, Chiyu decided to make it real. After all, he had been away for so long, and he had a strong longing for his parents. If it wasn't for the fact that Dragon Field Courtyard was already his home in his heart, and that Ryue and the others who knew the truth would be too worried, he would have definitely gone to see his parents first. Filial piety was the most important of all virtues. After experiencing the happiness of being an orphan and having parents now, Chiyu especially cherished this familial love. The 5 girls were all good and understanding girls. When Chiyu mentioned that he wanted to see his parents, they naturally would not object. Of course, there was only one condition, and that was that he had to bring every single one of them. Even the shy Plant Soul mustered up the courage to follow this time. This could be considered as Chiyu officially bringing them to see his parents. If they backed out now, they might not have another chance in the future. Of course, the Plant Soul understood this. Chiyu's clothes were tidy again. His hair had also been combed neatly by Ryue. Silver hair and black clothes. Although he wasn't very handsome, his special aura was incomparable. Only in front of his lover and family would the king of the Zodiac act so amiable and approachable. If it was someone else, who knew what would happen? Of course, under his black clothes, there were many bruises on his skin. They were all the work of his lovers and babies. Chiyu, do you want to inform everyone that you're back safely? They are also very worried about your situation. After making a fuss, as the eldest sister, Ryue was the first to recover her wisdom. Chiyu smiled and said, "Go ahead." "Oh, right. Why was that brat Guanjing still sleeping? Is he like this every day? It's not a problem for you to inform everyone that I'm back. But just inform the Zodiac Guardian Warriors. That'll do. Don't inform the Zodiac Squad for now. I don't want the 4 major families to know. It's not easy for me to come back. This time, I want to have some peace and quiet. In the past, even when I had peace and quiet, I would still train hard. This time I can finally relax. I can also spend time with all of you. Although you're all my confidants, I've never taken on the responsibility of being your boyfriend." The 5 girls rolled their eyes at Chiyu, as if saying, "It's good that you know." Ryue said, "Guanjing seems to have been stimulated by you in space. After coming back, he has been training hard. He doesn't even go home. Although he's lazy, he's still a good person. I believe that after this period of training, He will definitely give us a surprise. I believe that after this period of training, he will definitely give us a surprise. Qi Yu nodded his head. Only by continuously working hard can one's strength rise to the next level. This trip to hell had allowed me to see many of our flaws. Firstly, and this is also the most serious point, we simply have too few people. We can't compare to the armies of other planes. For example, the Burning Legion in hell has at least 100,000 people. They're so powerful that no country in this world can compete with them. Ryua frowned and said, "Can't we rely on our technology?" Chi shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "You should be very clear about our own strength. The entire Burning Legion can be said to be a super combination of psychics. Their defense is not something that ordinary weapons can break. Even weapons of mass destruction, such as missiles, are very difficult to fight against the Burning Legion. The only thing that can really hurt them is the ultimate weapon of mankind, nuclear weapons. However, as the saying goes, injuring 1,000 enemies, injuring 800. Not to mention that the number of nuclear bombs on Earth has been reduced to a historical low due to the asteroids. Even if there were enough nuclear bombs, it wouldn't be easy to destroy the Burning Legion. Moreover, once the nuclear bombs are used, the damage to Earth will be unimaginable. You don't want to see Earth become a living hell with radiation. Therefore, if we want to stop the Burning Legion's advance, we have to rely on strong individual combat ability. Looking at the current situation, the only place that can be used is the Mech Legion of the United States. But how many of them are there? There are only a little more than 1,000, and a large part of them was destroyed by the asteroids. Their combat ability is far from enough. If I were Satan, once I invade Earth, I would spread out my main force and start a large-scale invasion with thousands or tens of thousands of people. At the same time, I would start a war with many countries. At that time, what they will bring will be endless slaughter, causing a huge disaster to the whole world. What should we do? Therefore, we will become the main force to snipe them. However, in the Hell Legion, other than Satan and Lucifer, although there are no enemies in my eyes, how can our Zodiac warriors compare to the number of 100,000? The absolute disadvantage in numbers will make it very difficult for us to fight. We can only gradually weaken the strength of the Burning Legion in the form of guerrilla warfare. In the process, Earth will be baptized by the enemy. We can't even estimate how much damage we will suffer. Ryue's eyes flickered. Do you have any good suggestions? What can we do to fight against the infernal realm? Chiyu thought about it and said, if we want to compete with them, we need to improve our strength first. Although we only have a little more than 100 people. These 100 people are like a sharp knife that the opponent can't resist. They are a constant threat to the entire Burning Hell Legion. Then, we need to find a way to lure them to a place where there is no one and fight them to the death. Only in this way can we win against the opponent and minimize the losses of humans. Ryu nodded and said, "It seems that it is not impossible to achieve. Through the attack on the asteroids, it can be seen that whether it is the Greek guardians or the Pope, they can still stand on the right side when it comes to big issues. Coupled with our strength, we should be able to stop Satan." Chiyu said, "It will be very difficult. First of all, Yamu and her Greek guardians are facing the same problem as us, which is numbers. Although their strength is not bad, their numbers are too few. You must know that the entire Burning Legion can use powerful dark energy. It is easier said than done to fight against them. As for the Holy See, they are not bad. They have a lot of believers. They are also good at fighting against the Hell World's best light power. However, we don't know how much strength the Holy See has now. The number of people that can really be used is probably not many. After all, although the Holy See has developed for many years, the various countries will not allow it to have too strong an armed force. This greatly restricts the Holy See's strength. Moreover, what I am most worried about is that even if the Burning Hell Legion is stopped by us. However, Grandmaster once said that Earth's crisis comes wave after wave. When that unknown day comes, the entrance to Earth from the various evil planes will open. Will it only be the hell side that invades Earth? Satan's younger brother, Sanaa, once said that the most likely thing to appear at the same time as Satan is the power of the underworld. The ruler there is Hades in Greek mythology. He rebelled from the Greek gods. His strength is tyrannical, and he has many subordinates, even comparable to hell. If Satan has the assistance of Hades, we will be even more strained. The women all gasped, their eyes revealing a thoughtful light. Chi Yu continued, "This world is balanced, judging from the current situation on Earth. Ability users are mainly divided into three major forces. One is the Holy See, there is no doubt about that. The other is the Greek Guardians, led by Yamu. From the information I have received, they will be fighting against Hell and the Underworld, respectively. However, don't forget that on Earth, we are also a strong force among ability users. Moreover, judging from the current situation, we are even the strongest, representing the entire East. There are dark forces in the West. Don't tell me there are no dark forces in the East? This is very difficult to determine. Once a strong dark force appears on our side, I am afraid that we will not be able to help the Holy See and the Greek Guardians. In that case, we might not even be able to take care of ourselves. How are we going to help the Vatican and the Greek Guardians? The real disaster on Earth will also appear at that time. Although this is only my guess, this situation is very likely to happen." Chapter 303. The atmosphere in the limousine became much more solemn. Behind the surface of Earth's calmness, there was such a dangerous situation. More importantly, no one knew when that day would come. If they were to tell the governments that dark forces would descend on Earth, it would be very difficult to convince them. Moreover, it would be very difficult for the governments to solve such a problem. On the bright and sunny Earth, there seemed to be an invisible pressure shrouding it. No one knew when that day would come, and the arrival of that day for Earth, even if it wasn't the end of the world, it was close to it. Shangbing smiled and said, "All right, everyone, don't be so depressed. Chi Yu finally came back. Think about it, we can even solve a problem like the asteroids. So what if the dark forces are strong? At worst, we can just fight guerrilla warfare and do our best to eliminate their effective forces. And the countries aren't fools. Earth's biggest advantage is the power of technology. Perhaps the countries will suffer at the beginning, but who can be sure that the countries on Earth can't think of a way to deal with those evil forces? At least for now, Earth is still peaceful. Everyone be happy. Don't forget, you are going to see your in-laws." Hearing Shangbing's words, the atmosphere in the limousine became more relaxed. Chi raised his head and said, "Indeed, I really need to relax. Let's hope this time can last a little longer. If my judgment is correct, even if hell attacks, it won't happen in a short time. Let me rest for a few days and recover my energy." Then he gathered everyone together. "Then do your best to improve everyone's strength, especially our Zodiac Guardian God Warriors. You must reach the 9th cloud level as soon as possible. When the time comes, if all 12 of you can reach the 9th cloud level, and with me we can activate the Zodiac Guardian God domain together, whether it's the great demon king Satan or Hades. It's not like we don't have a chance. If they dare to come, I will show them the power to destroy heaven and earth." As he spoke, Chi Yu subconsciously touched the Kongtong seal on his chest. Before leaving the Dragon Field courtyard, Ryua had already given him the 2 halves of the Xianyuan sword. The Xianyuan sword had completely lost its spirituality, let alone the existence of Xuanyuan's soul. The black blade looked just like an ordinary iron sword. Chi Yu secretly used Kirin's true fire to test it. The Xianyuan sword did not react at all, let alone recast it. The cave seal's spirit had once said that if he wanted to reforge the Xianyuan sword, he would need heavenly fire to do so. The heavenly fire did not exist on Earth at all. If it was in the past, Chi Yu might have given up. However, ever since he upgraded his thundercloud force to the 9th cloud level in Hell, his confidence was rekindled. He believed that since the Earth was facing such a huge crisis, then he would definitely be able to restore the Xianyuan sword to its original glory. Ruyue said, "Chiyu, I'm afraid it will be very difficult for everyone to reach the 9th cloud level. After all, although a few of us have already reached the 8th cloud level, people like Guanjing and Emodan are only at the 6th cloud level. It is impossible to reach the 3rd cloud level in a short time." Chiyu smiled. He said, "Do you still remember what I said before? In this world, nothing is impossible. It is very difficult for me to improve my strength now. When the time comes, I will do my best to use the natural source of energy to help you cultivate. One by one, I will help as many of you as you can reach the 9th cloud level. After all, once you reach the 9th cloud level, your strength will enter another realm." Not only could he use the 3rd stage of origin mutation to instantly double his strength, but he would also gain his own domain ability. When the time comes, each of you will be as strong as a Dreadlord, or even stronger. Kirin's support ability. This was Kirin's specialty among the Zodiac Guardian Warriors. Since his own strength could only be improved through opportunities, then he would use the time he spent looking for opportunities to help others. With Chiyu's understanding of the natural source of energy, he believed that with his full support, each of the Zodiac Guardian Warriors would improve qualitatively. The Cadillac drove smoothly on the main road. There was not much traffic at this time. As they chatted, they arrived in front of the Golden Grain Group. Chiyu got out of the car first and opened the door for the ladies, allowing them to step out one by one. Although they were dressed very casually, the appearance of the 5 ladies immediately painted the plaza in front of the Golden Grain Group with a layer of brilliance. Even the flowers in the square that had just begun to bloom were overshadowed by it. Looking at the 5 ladies with different temperaments, Chiyu exclaimed, "I think that's the best way to describe you guys." Ming Ming giggled. "How tacky. Can't you think of some other adjectives?" Chiyu scratched his head, helplessly. "You know, I'm almost illiterate. Unfortunately, I don't have the time now. Otherwise, I would really like to go back to a better school. That way, you guys won't abandon me." As he said that, he put on a pitiful expression. Unfortunately, the 5 ladies did not seem to see it and walked straight to the entrance of the Golden Grain Group. Chiyu followed them into the Golden Grain Group. As he expected, the appearance of the 5 ladies instantly caused a commotion in the lobby of the Golden Grain Group. The crowd that had been shuttling back and forth stopped in the middle, and all eyes were focused on them. Ruyue had seen this kind of scene many times. Naturally, she did not mind. Shangbing never cared what others thought of her. Of course, Chiyu was an exception. Snow Girl had been the general manager of Kirin Group for a long time. She was more or less able to handle such a scene. As for the Plant Soul and Ming Ming, they were a little shy. The Plant Soul lowered its head. Ming Ming, on the other hand, glared at the people who were looking at them, as if saying, "What are you looking at? Haven't you seen a beauty before?" Of course, if the Golden Grain Group employees who were looking at them could hear the voices of the beauties, they would definitely answer that they had seen the beauties before. But they had never seen so many beauties at the same time. The 5 ladies were not ordinary people. The temperament they exuded was naturally not something that ordinary people could compare with. This made their beauty more than just on the surface. The white-collar workers of the Golden Grain Group admired them even more. If it were not for them, there were too many of them. Perhaps someone had already come up to hit on them. To Chiyu, the way others looked at him was something to be proud of. "These are all my confidants." Of course, he would not say it out loud. After all, he had just been punished by the family. He did not want to be the target of public criticism again. The fiery gazes gradually disappeared after they were isolated by the elevator door. For a moment, the hall of the Golden Grain Group's main building was filled with sighs. Everyone was trying to guess what those beauties were doing. "Xiao Wang, do you know which company those beauties are from? If they were a company's public relations department. When it comes to business, They are always successful. Well, I don't know which company they are from. I think they are here to talk about business. From the looks of it, it should be a big business. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sent so many beauties. Almost every single one of them could become a goddess in my heart, especially the one walking at the front. I'm afraid even the British princess can't compare with her temperament. Oof, who said that? I just like the shy girl next to him. Her figure is so slim. That appearance and that gentle temperament are the most suitable for me. All right. You two don't have to be so lascivious. Another employee who seemed to be of a higher rank said, among those people just now, I can recognize a few of them. Didn't you see that among the 6 of them only one is a man? That silver-haired man. He is our company's deputy general manager, Chiyu, who has only been here a few times since he took office. I heard that he is the CEO's long-lost son. If it wasn't him, who could walk with so many beauties? But I know which one of those girls is his girlfriend. Oh, tell me, which one is it? It's the one wearing a white dress that seems to be covered with a layer of frost. Didn't you see how gentle her eyes were when she looked at CEO Chi? It was like the thawing of ice and snow. She is the most famous senior manager recently. She is the general manager of the Kirin Group, who started by selling high-priced fruits. It is said that our CEO Chi is the boss behind the scenes of Kirin Group. It is because of this reason that he doesn't come to our company to work. As for the other beauties, I only know one of them. She is walking at the front, next to CEO Chi. She is the general manager of the Longyu Group, a famous strong woman. In her hands, the assets of the Longyu Group have increased several times. However, whether it is the Longyu Group or the Kirin Group, they are still much worse than our group. If these employees who were discussing knew that the 5 stunning beauties were actually Chi Yu's confidants, what would they think? Of course, it was impossible for Chi Yu to hear these people's discussion. Even if he heard it, he would just laugh it off. Soon, the elevator arrived at the top floor of the Golden Grain building. When the door opened, Chi Yu and the other 5 people walked out. Chi Tianlei's secretary was already waiting there. He respectfully saluted to Chi Yu and said, CEO Chi, you're here. The chairman asked you to go to his office. Chi Yu nodded and returned the salute. He said, thank you. At this moment, Chi Yu saw a familiar figure. It was Secretary Huang, who was assigned to him by Chi Tianlei Huang Wei. Huang Wei looked at Chi Yu with a complicated gaze, especially when she saw the 5 absolute beauties by Chi Yu's side. She was completely dumbfounded. She stood in the hallway, looking at each outstanding beauty. The feeling of inferiority made her unable to even lift her head. Once upon a time, she just regarded Chi Yu as a playboy who didn't know anything. However, it was at that time that Chi Yu saved her life. He used his own body to block the explosive force of the rocket. From that time on, Huang Wei's feelings for Chi Yu had completely changed, especially when she knew that Chi Yu turned out to be the behind-the-scenes boss of the Kirin Group. This strange feeling filled her heart. She even waited for Chi Yu to come to work every day. However, from that time on, Chi Yu never appeared again. It was as if he had evaporated from the face of the earth. Huang Wei even shamelessly asked Chi Tianlei when Chi would come to work a few times. But Chi Tianlei's answer was also very helpless. He only said 3 words, I don't know. At this moment, this man finally came again. He seemed to have gone through a lot, but his calm and deep gaze was also more determined than before. To her, this man, who was like a mystery, had already deeply attracted her heart. As the modern inheritor of the Kirin bloodline, although Chi Yu wasn't very handsome, he was like a huge magnet. Any woman who paid attention to him for a long time would be attracted to him. Even powerful beauties like Ryu and Ming Ming couldn't escape, let alone this rich heiress. Chi Yu was the first to greet her. Hello, Secretary Huang. Ah. Huang Wei woke up from his complicated feelings and said subconsciously, Chairman Chi, you still come to work. I thought you were too busy with the Kirin Group and wouldn't come anymore. After saying this, even Huang Wei was surprised by the resentment in his voice. It sounded like a resentful wife. As soon as Huang Wei said this, Qi Yu suffered. Almost at the same time, 5 small hands appeared on his back and pinched the soft flesh in different places. Qi Yu's expression instantly became strange. No matter how strong he was, he wouldn't dare to use it to defend against his wife's attacks. Moreover, the attack would only cause him pain. At that moment, the ruffian turned into a gentleman. Qi Yu looked straight ahead and said with a serious expression that he had never shown before, "Secretary Huang, this is indeed my fault. I will report this matter to the chairman." He tried to make his voice as calm and cold as possible, like a person in a superior position. Feeling the unprecedented high-level aura that Qi Yu exuded, Huang Wei couldn't help but feel even more intense in her heart. However, she did not know that behind Qi Yu, 5 small hands were secretly exerting force, pinching and twisting a certain someone's flesh. Walking past Huang Wei, Qi Yu's bitter voice reached the 5 women's ears. Can you be gentler? Gentler? Do you have a good memory? You only came to work once, and you actually found such a beautiful female secretary. Bear with it. You'll get used to it after a bit, said Shangbing. She was the one who pinched Qi Yu's hand the most forcefully. Finally, Qi Yu walked into his father's office in torment. As soon as he entered the door, his back felt lighter. The 5 evil hands had finally disappeared. Qi Yu let out a long breath. He felt a burning sensation on his back. It seemed that there were more bruises. He couldn't help but secretly decide that he definitely wouldn't use his energy transformation to dispel these bruises. He would show them at night and let them feel sorry for him. Next time, they wouldn't be so forceful. "You are your back. I missed you so much." Ying Xiaodai rushed over almost as soon as she opened the door. Her footsteps were light and her movements were quick. She didn't look like a middle-aged woman at all. Although her face was full of joy and excitement, Qi Yu could clearly see that his mother was much more radiant than the last time he saw her. The condition of her body and the energy she emitted were many times stronger than before. It seemed that his body transformation was completely successful. Feeling his mother's embrace, Qi Yu's eyes suddenly became hot. His heart was filled with a warm feeling. Even the pain in his back seemed to have disappeared. Qi Tianlei stood in front of his desk and looked at Qi Yu. Like Ying Xiaodai, he had also become younger than before. The wrinkles on his face had obviously reduced a lot, and his wise eyes had also become brighter. There was only satisfaction in his eyes as he looked at his tall son. When they arrived, the 5 women, who were fierce before, suddenly turned into extremely gentle birds. At the same time they saluted and said, "Hello, Uncle and Auntie." Qi Tianlei nodded and said with a smile, "Hello. Frankly, I'm a little envious of this kid, Qi Yu." "Is that so?" Ying Xiaodia's ears were very sharp. She turned around immediately and didn't wait for Qi Yu to react. His mother took a step back to his father's side. He clearly saw that his mother's hand had reached his father's back, and his father's face became stiff in an instant. Is pinching also hereditary?" Qi Yu looked at Qi Tianlei and couldn't help but lower his head and snicker a few times, a little gloating. Qi Tianlei coughed and said, "Xiaodai, I was just saying casually. You know me about this." Ying Xiaodai snorted and said, "Just saying casually proves that you have this idea. Forget it. I'll let you go this time. However, if there's a next time, don't blame me for being rude. I'll let you know what the 1,000-hand Guanyin Great Technique is." Qi Tianlei couldn't take it anymore and said, "Qi Yu, look at your mother. You taught us the cultivation method, but she used it all on me. Do you have any golden bell cover and iron skin technique? Teach me quickly. I'll be able to deal with her in the future." Qi Yu glanced at his wives with a wry smile and said, "Dad, even if you have this kind of technique, are you sure you dare to use it in front of Mom?" The father and son looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They couldn't help but show a trace of helplessness. Warmth filled the president's office amidst this helplessness. Perhaps no employee of the Golden Valley Group would have thought that the supreme leader of the group would have such a time. Ruyue and the other women were obviously very interested in Ing Xiaodia's 1,000-hand Guanyin great technique, and they all surrounded her obediently, although they helped Qi Tianlei out of trouble. But Qi Yu looked at his mother being coaxed by these girls to the point that she even forgot about him. He knew that his mother's unique skill would not be lost, and the result of not being lost was that his own flesh and blood would suffer. Qi Tianlei walked to Qi Yu's side, looked at his son, who seemed to have grown a little taller, and said, "Why did you go for so long this time? Don't you know how worried we were? Sigh, too many things have happened recently. Can you not participate in those dangerous operations in the future? Fortunately, it was successful this time. Otherwise, if you didn't come back, our family wouldn't even be able to die together." Qi Yu was startled for a moment. "Dad, what are you talking about? I don't understand." Qi Tianlei said indifferently, "Others don't know about the asteroid hitting the Earth, but do you think I don't know? You're underestimating your father too much." Qi Yu was shocked in his heart, and the gaze he looked at Qi Tianlei immediately became a lot more serious. "If my guess is correct, you must have participated in this operation. You were missing for so many days before. I really thought you were already in this operation." Speaking to here, Qi Tianlei still had a lingering fear, revealing a bit of worry. "I didn't even dare to tell your mother. Later you called back, and I knew you were still alive. The reason why you came back so late was probably because you were injured in this operation. In order not to let us worry, you came back after your injury was healed." Looking at his father, the warmth in Qi Yu's heart became burning hot. Although Qi Tianlei tried to keep his tone as calm as possible, but Qi Yu saw that his hands were slightly trembling. He was worried about him, afraid that he would never come back. "Dad." Qi Yu just wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Qi Tianlei. Qi Tianlei resolutely said, "Although I am also very patriotic, and I also know that what you did this time is right for the entire human race, but at the same time, I am also a father, your and Inying's father. You are my only son, and I really don't want you to take any more risks. Qi Yu, your father no longer cares about money. What I care about now is for our family to be able to live together. Don't take any more risks. For the sake of me and your mother, can you promise me?" Qi Yu looked at Qi Tianlei. He really wanted to open his mouth and agree to his father's request. From Qi Tianlei's gaze, he could see too many things. Furthermore, this was what he had always wanted the most. But could he really promise? "Dad, I don't want to lie to you. I can't do it. Do you remember? I have told you that I am not appointed by anyone, and I don't need to accept anyone's orders. What I do is what I have to do, and only I can do it. Sometimes I really can't help myself. Since you know so many things, I can tell you frankly, in our world, there are many people like me. There are many, many people like me. They are all working hard for a common goal, which is to protect their homes. In the West, there are Western guardians. For example, the Vatican and the legendary successor of the Greek gods. And in our East, there are also Eastern guardians. I'm one of them." Qi Tianlei's eyes flashed, and he said, "Could it be? If you, one of the Eastern guardians, is missing, can't protect the East anymore?" Qi Yu said with a wry smile, "Although this is a little disrespectful to the other Eastern guardians, I still have to tell you, in a sense, I am indeed the most important one. Among the Eastern guardians, the most powerful and the main force is called the Zodiac Guardian. The 12 Zodiac guardian gods each have the power of their own zodiac. They are powerful. They can be compared with the Western guardians, and the number of Zodiac guardian gods is not as simple as 12. There should be 13. In addition to the 12 Zodiac guardian warriors, there is also Kirin. You must be very familiar with the historical myth of our Yanhuang Republic. In the legend, Kirin is the king of the beasts, and among the Zodiac guardian warriors, Kirin is also the king of the Zodiac, or he is even the king of the Eastern Guardians. Among the Eastern Guardians, there can be no one, but it can't be without his king. At this point, Chiyu paused, looked deeply into his father's eyes, and continued, "And I am Kirin." Listening to Chiyu's words, Chi Tianlei couldn't help but tremble. "Kirin, my son is Kirin?" Chiyu sighed. "In addition to your bloodline, I also inherited Kirin's bloodline, so I have the power of Kirin. As the king of the Zodiac, I can't retreat under any circumstances. When a crisis comes, I must rush to the front. Otherwise, how can I lead my partners? Dad, I know I'm not a qualified son, but in order for more sons to be reunited with their parents, and for you and Mom, I must constantly fight against those who want to invade our world, invade the East. I also hope that such days can end soon, but I really can't help it. I'm sorry, Dad. I know I let you down." Looking at Chiyu, Chi Tianlei fell into a short daze. Chiyu's body seemed to become taller in his eyes. Even the aura on his body seemed to have changed in some way. Of course, Chi Tianlei could imagine how heavy the burden on Chiyu's shoulders was. The king of the Eastern Guardians, such a powerful title, but how much did his son pay for it? "I understand." After a long time, Chi Tianlei said with some difficulty, "Go do what you should do. After all, we are just a small family. For the sake of our country's existence, for the sake of not being invaded, I support you, son. At the same time, I am also proud to have a son like you." "Dad," Chiyu's voice was a little choked. His father's understanding was more important than anything to him. Chi Tianlei patted Chiyu's shoulder and said, "Rest assured, do what you have to do. Your mom has me here. But can you tell me, how long do you have to live like this? Could it be that there is no end?" Chiyu gently shook his head and said, "I don't know how long it will last. But one thing is for sure, within a year, something major will happen. If we get through this, maybe in the future, in the days to come, we can live a peaceful life, and I can also stay with you and Mom." Chi Tianlei naturally understood the meaning behind Chiyu's words. He nodded and said firmly, "I am waiting for that day to come. Son, I believe in you, no matter what difficulties. You will definitely be able to get through, right?" "Of course I can. Your excellent son can even pick up asteroids. What else can be difficult for him?" The office door suddenly opened. A group of people walked in from outside. Seeing this group of people appear, everyone in the room, including Chiyu, was stunned. In fact, Chiyu had already sensed that someone was approaching the office from outside. But because the other party's aura was not hostile and they were just ordinary people, he only thought that it was the office staff of Golden Valley Group and did not pay too much attention. But now, it seemed that everything was not as simple as he had imagined. Appearing in front of Chi Tianlei and Chiyu was a row of soldiers, a total of 8 people. Neatly dressed in military uniforms, they looked so majestic. Although the invisible pressure was not on the energy level, it was still enough to make people respect them. This was because the same number of stars hung on the shoulders of this group of people. "Dad, why are you here?" Ming Ming had already come to Chiyu's side. That's right. On the shoulders of this group of 8 people, there were 3 stars. General, 8 generals. It should be noted that in the entire Yanhuang Republic, there were no more than 15 generals. At this moment, more than half of the people had appeared in the CEO's office of Golden Valley Group. With their military uniforms, it was no wonder that the staff of Golden Valley Group outside did not stop them. Who would dare to stop these generals, who symbolized the absolute top military officials of the Yanhuang Republic? General Ji Zhangming stood at the front, looking at Chiyu, his eyes filled with relief. Looking at Ji Zhangming, Chiyu felt a little awkward. At this time, his 5 confidants were all present, and Ji Zhangming was considered one of his future fathers-in-law. Seeing that he was such a playboy, how would this general treat him? To Chiyu's surprise, Ji Zhangming did not seem to see the other women. His gentle and comforting eyes looked at Chiyu and smiled. "Because Chiyu is back, so we came." Chiyu was stunned. "Huh, I've only just returned. Uncle, you guys are way too well informed. Ji Zhongming said seriously, because of your importance to the country, I'm sorry Dragonfield Courtyard has a special satellite monitoring you. So, when you came back, we were the first to know. But don't worry. Since you are back, there is no need for satellite monitoring. We just want to know your whereabouts. I hope you can forgive us. Qi Yu looked at his father with a bitter smile. Qi Tianlei was also looking at him. He knew that his son was right. Other than him being the king of the Eastern Guardians, he could not think of any other explanation. Even if it was him, it was impossible for the country to use a single satellite to monitor him. It seemed that his son's status in the country had reached an unimaginable level. Chapter 304. Just as Qi Yu was about to say something, Ji Zhongming and the other 7 generals suddenly stood at attention in unison. Although the average age of these generals was over 60 years old, when they stood at attention at the same time, a murderous aura rushed toward them. His solemn expression startled everyone present. Ji Zhongming shouted in a deep voice, "Salute to the hero of our country." 8 hands, 8 generals' right hands, at the same time in the most standard posture, tilted next to their military caps. Silence. The entire room had fallen into complete silence. The 8 generals all had solemn expressions on their faces, and their eyes were filled with respect. Ying Xiaodai covered her mouth in surprise. The 5 women brought by Qi Yu, including Ji Mingming, subconsciously widened their eyes. Qi Tianlei looked at the 8 generals, dumbfounded, and didn't know what to say. "Uncle, what are you doing?" Although Qi Yu was instantly shocked to the point that his blood was boiling, he was still the first to react, as he had been through great storms. Ji Zhongming didn't put down his right hand and said in a deep voice, "On behalf of the country, we salute you. For the benefit of the country, you gave up your personal safety and saved the country from danger several times. This time, you even saved the whole world. The United States has officially notified our country after the asteroid deviated from its orbit. As a sign of respect for your actions, the United States said that from now on, the Yanhuang Republic will be their eternal ally. Qi Yu, our salute is what you deserve. Of course, this is far from being able to repay what you have done for the country. With the special approval of the President, from the moment you returned to the Yanhuang Republic, you have become the first foreign minister of the Yanhuang Republic. From now on, you will have the same treatment as the vice president in our country. No matter what level of military officers, they will automatically lower their status when they see you. Apart from not being able to command the army, you have now become the highest leader in the military, comparable to the chairman of the military commission." "Ah, the chairman of the military commission?" Qi Yu looked at Ji Zhongming with a bitter smile. He had never thought about these empty titles. "Uncle, this is completely unnecessary. Our country can't make such an exception. Actually, everything I've done is for my own sake. For my friends and family, I am not as great as you think." Mingming hurriedly said, "That's right. Dad, how can a father-in-law bow to his son-in-law? Hurry up and put your hands down." Ji Zhongming's eyes were filled with power as he glared at Mingming. With Mingming's powerful strength, Ji Zhongming's eyes were filled with power. Under his father's firm gaze, he was so frightened that he lowered his head. Ji Zhongming said in a deep voice, "We're not just bowing to Qi Yu alone. At the same time, we're also bowing to Qi Yu's father, Mr. Qi Tianlei, and Qi Yu's mother, Madame Ying Xiaodai. It was them who had given birth to such an outstanding talent. I heard what Mr. Qi Tianlei said just now. Mr. Qi, on behalf of the military, I would like to extend my highest respect to you." At this time, Qi Tianlei had recovered from the shock just now. He only had one feeling now, and that was pride. He was proud of his own son. He stood beside Qi Yu. He returned the salute to the 8 generals and said, "Generals, you don't have to do this. Actually, although Xiaodai and I gave birth to Qi Yu, we never raised him for a single day. I heard from Qi Yu that he grew up in an orphanage. If not for the country, he wouldn't be where he is today. Although he did some things for the country. But this is what he should do. Besides, I believe that Chi Yu doesn't want too many restrictions and privileges. He is only a citizen of the country. Protecting the country is what any citizen should do. A tall and slightly plump general next to Ji Zhongming laughed and said, "Old Ji, you really kept it a secret. So this young man is your daughter's boyfriend. Sigh, why don't I have a beautiful daughter? I'm basking in the glory of having such a son-in-law." Ji Zhongming glared at him. "That's your own problem." At this time, his face revealed a hint of pride. As he spoke, the 8 generals finally put down their saluting hands. Chi Tianlei coughed and gave Ing Xiaodai a look. He said, "Hurry up and ask the secretary to pour tea for the generals." Only then did Ing Xiaodai come to her senses. She and the 5 women were testing in the office just now, and the 5 women were chattering, so she didn't hear the conversation between Chi Yu and his son. He looked at his son with a strange expression before leaving the room. Ji Zhongming coughed and said, "There's no need to trouble yourself. Mr. Chi, oh no, in-law. I think I can call you that now. Your son has been abducting my daughter for a long time." As he spoke, his gaze fell on the other 4 women. Chi Tianlei looked at Chi Yu with a bitter smile. He thought to himself, "You brat, let's see how you explain yourself after being caught red-handed by his father." Although that was what he was thinking, he still said, "Of course, it's my honor." Ji Zhongming said, "Everything that Chi Yu did this time not only saved the world, but also raised the reputation of our country to a whole new level. Now, our country is already on par with America. The people in the American military admire Chi Yu from the bottom of their hearts. His contribution to diplomacy cannot be described with just commendation. At the very least, America has decided to withdraw all the U.S. troops stationed in our various military bases in Asia. Their reason is very simple. With the Yanhuang Republic around, they don't need any more military forces." Chi Yu scratched his head and said, "There's such an effect? I didn't think of it." Ji Zhongming glanced at him and said, "Although the people of the country don't know of your existence, you are the greatest treasure in the eyes of the country's senior officials. Moreover, you have made such a great contribution that even the president doesn't know how to commend you. That's why the 8 of us rushed over as soon as you came back. First of all, we would like to express the country's respect for you. At the same time, we would like to announce a few things that you are more hopeful about. First, due to your special contribution to the country, the president has decided to give you a special approval. You don't have to follow the country's policy of monogamy. Whenever you want to get married, it will be directly approved by the State Council. It will also be registered." Huh. Chi Yu wasn't the only one who was surprised. Chi Tianlei and Ing Xiaodai, who had just entered the room, were also surprised. How could this work? The president had given special approval for him to marry more wives. This problem seemed to have been solved too easily. The eyes of Ming Ming and the other 4 women shone with excitement at the same time, although they could all give up everything for the sake of Chi Yu, as women who didn't want to be able to officially marry the man they loved. At this moment, the country's recognition had completely conquered their hearts. It was as if all the fear they had felt during the battle against the asteroid was worth it. Chi Yu looked at Ji Zhongming, dumbfounded. How could this work? Isn't this breaking the rules? Can the country's policy be so favorable? Ji Zhongming said snappily, "As a father, I really can't accept your flirtatious behavior. But as a general of the country, I think that an outstanding talent like you, a talent who has made great contributions to the world, this kind of treatment isn't too much. From the perspective of evolution, with your excellence, your children in the future will inevitably be the most outstanding talents. Having more wives meant that you would have more children in the future. The president is now eager for you to marry more wives and add more talents to our country. However, all of this is done in secret. you'd better not spread it out, so as not to cause public opinion." Only then did Chi Yu confirm that it was true. His heart instantly went wild with joy. Even the treatment of the chairman of the military commission was nothing to him. But the country's recognition that he could marry multiple wives made him wild with joy. "That's great. The biggest problem has finally been solved. Uncle, thank you." "Oh, thank you too. You can rest assured that I will always be a citizen of China. No matter what, I will protect China until the end of my power." Chi Tianlei muttered to himself, "This is actually possible, but this seems to be the best solution. I even tried to get him to join a religion that allows him to marry more wives. It seems like there's no need for that now." Ji Zhongming looked at Chi Tianlei and thought to himself, like father, like son, he could even think of such a method. No wonder his son was so fickle. "Chi, I can't stay for too long. We have to go back. However, when you have time, it's best if you can come to my place. I'm referring to the Yan Huang Seoul headquarters. There's still some information that I need you to confirm." Chi Yu's heart moved, and he said, "Uncle, you're referring to the U.S. Army's Mech Corps. Indeed, they're very powerful. Does our country have any research in this area?" Ji Zhongming's expression changed slightly, and he gestured to Chi Yu to keep quiet and said, "We'll talk about this when we get to the Yan Huang Seoul headquarters. It won't affect your family's happiness. Ming Ming, you little girl, when you're free, come home more often. You're crazy out there every day, it's like this." Ming Ming said with some grievance, "Dad, how am I crazy? Don't forget, your daughter is also a recipient of the Diamond Guardian Medal." Hearing Ming Ming's words, Chi Tianlei completely fainted this time. Even his daughter-in-law has the Diamond Guardian Medal. My God! Am I not dreaming? Ji Zhongming shook his head helplessly and left the Golden Grain building with the other 7 generals. Chi Tianlei and Chi Yu saw them out of the building, and after they got into the car, they returned to the office. "Son, your dad's heart isn't too good. If something like this happens again, can you let me know in advance?" Chi Tianlei looked at Chi Yu humorously. His mood at this time could not be described as good. In his eyes, his son was perfect. Chi Yu looked at his dad helplessly and said, "My heart isn't too good either. I'll have to tell father-in-law about this problem later." Ming Ming giggled and said, "You still dare to say this to my dad? Humph, it's not easy for Dad to acquiesce to the fact that you have a lot of wives this time. Aren't you afraid of getting beaten up?" Chi Yu chuckled and said, "Father-in-law can't bear to beat me. I've finally solved the problem of a father-in-law. However, I have the president's warrant. Does this count as a marriage according to the decree?" As he spoke, his gaze fell on the other women. Ryue giggled and said, "Marriage according to the decree? Don't forget, my parents are not that easy to talk to. They still don't know about our situation." Shangbing giggled and said, "I'm still the best. I don't have any burdens." Although she was smiling, there was a hint of sadness in the depths of her eyes. The plant soul did not speak, but it hugged Shangbing's arm and secretly used its hand to stroke her back, using the warm energy of nature to comfort her. Although she was an orphan, Shangbing, who did not even have parents, was obviously even more pitiful. Snow Girl's eyes reddened, and she lowered her head and said, "I don't have parents to admit anything. If Dad and Mom were still here, they would definitely agree to us." Ing Xiaodai saw that something was wrong and quickly went up to the 3 women into her arms and said gently, "You silly girls, what are you crying for? Am I not your mother then? If Chi Yu dares to bully you in the future, tell me. See how I'll deal with him." Chi Yu quickly smiled apologetically and said, "That's right, you can complain to Mom. I definitely won't fight back, and I definitely won't talk back." Ryue said apologetically, "It's all my fault. I shouldn't have brought it up. We are a big family and we are all family. No one is an orphan, right?" Ming Ming also walked up and together with Ryue stood in front of the other 3 women and held their hands tightly, with Ing Xiaojie's warm palm covering the top. Looking at these 5 beautiful daughters-in-law, she was already grinning from ear to ear. Chi Tianlei and Chi Yu looked at each other, and Chi Yu asked for help. "Dad, their united front seems to be a bit too strong." Chi Tianlei laughed and said, "Don't look at me, it's useless to look at me. I can't help you. When I'm at home, I listen to your mother. You should know this. It's over. Looks like I have no status in the future." The reunion of the family lasted until the evening. Kirin's courtyard, next to the Dragonfield courtyard, had entered the final stage of finishing. Chi Tianlei originally wanted Chi Yu to choose the decoration himself. Chi Yu didn't have any objections and let his father do whatever he wanted. In terms of living conditions, he didn't have any extravagant requests. The family had a delicious meal, and while eating, Chi Yu was surprised to find that the energy in his parents' bodies had increased very quickly. From an energy point of view, they already had the strength equivalent to the Zodiac guardian god warriors. With their ordinary bodies, it was already very difficult to reach this level. Obviously, his blood played an important role, and the cultivation technique he left behind was enough for his parents and sister to cultivate for a long time. As long as they could improve their bodies through cultivation, Chi Yu was satisfied. Time always passed quickly, and Chi Tianlei knew that Chi Yu had a lot of things to do, so he didn't ask them to stay. Anyway, when Kirin's courtyard was built, they would move over as soon as possible. At that time, whether it was Chi Yu or his daughters-in-law, they could all move over. The 8 generals' visit today had made him understand that Chi Yu was not only his son, but also the entire Yanhuang Republic and the entire East. The responsibility on his shoulders was much greater than he had imagined. On the way home, Chi Yu lay on the Cadillac chair, his head resting on Ryue's thigh, looking very comfortable. He was really too tired, ever since the matter of the asteroid was settled. He didn't have much time to rest before hurrying back to Earth. Although his energy had recovered, he was still very busy. The process of rushing back from the asteroid to Earth had exhausted him both physically and mentally. When he came back, he went to see Lung-Er and was about to go home to rest, but he was once again in Hell. In order to come back alive, he fought with the experts of Hell several times. Whether it was physical or mental exhaustion, it was too much. After a good meal, Chi Yu ate almost the same amount of food as the others combined. His mind was completely relaxed, and at this moment he finally fell asleep. Lying on his side, comfortably resting on Ryue's thigh, one hand gently holding Ryue's slender and smooth thigh, his face was indescribably satisfied. His breathing was even and rhythmically drifted back and forth in the car. The 5 women's eyes were focused on him. They didn't dare to speak, lest they wake up Chi Yu from his sweet dream. This was the first time they saw such a quiet Chi Yu. This Zodiac king, their lover, had really experienced too many things. Emotions of regret and concern constantly appeared on the 5 women's faces. At this moment, they no longer had any intention of blaming Chi Yu. This man carried too much on his shoulders. Every time there was danger, he would always rush to the front. Although he was their common man, they didn't want to care too much about it. The past was the past. They just wanted to be with him forever, never to be separated. The car quietly drove into the Dragonfield courtyard. At this time, it was already very late. They hadn't seen Chi Yu for a long time, so Chi Tianlei and his wife had talked a lot with him. This was because Chi Yingying had gone on a spring outing. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have come back now. When the door opened, Ryue was a little surprised to find that the lights in the courtyard were turned on. Subconsciously, she quietly covered Chi Yu's eyes with her hand. She was afraid that the lights in the courtyard outside would affect Chi Yu through the car window. It was a very small action, but it was enough to make the other 4 women feel a burst of warmth in their hearts. In their eyes, Ryue's position as the big sister would never be shaken. As soon as the car entered the door, it stopped. It could have driven to the door of the villa, but at this time the road forward was blocked. A total of 10 people, parallel to each other, blocked the Cadillac car. Their eyes were shining with excitement and a long-lost excitement. From left to right, in order, it was the rat Zodiac warrior Vol, the ox Zodiac warrior Mo Dan, the rabbit Zodiac warrior Modi, the tiger Zodiac warrior Su Dong, the snake Zodiac warrior Hu Guang, the horse Zodiac warrior Changjia, the sheep Zodiac warrior Yan Xiaoi, the monkey Zodiac warrior Ian, the dog Zodiac warrior Guanping, and the pig Zodiac warrior Guanjing. Their eyes were full of expectation, looking at the stretch car in front of them, and at the same time they straightened their bodies. The door opened, and Ming Ming nimbly jumped out of the car. Guanjing was the first to speak. Ming Ming, boss is back. Why didn't you wake me up? It was Brother Changjia and the others who came to tell me. Where is boss? When Chiyu and the others were still reuniting with their parents, Ryua had already called the Zodiac Guardian Warriors to inform them that Chiyu had returned. However, they didn't expect that in just a few hours, all the Zodiac Guardian Warriors had actually gathered at the Dragonfield courtyard. It must be known that Su Dong, who was the furthest away, had to fly for 2 hours to get back. Most of them looked travel-worn, and it was obvious that they had gathered not long ago. Ming Ming made a shushing gesture and said in a low voice, Chiyu is asleep, let's not wake him up. He seems very tired, let's let him rest for a while. Guanjing was stunned for a moment, and so were the other Zodiac Guardian Warriors. Boss was asleep? Ever since they knew Chiyu, they had never even seen how Chiyu looked like when he was asleep. All along, Chiyu spent his rest time in cultivation. Fell asleep. These 3 simple words seemed to represent a lot of things. The admiration in the eyes of the Zodiac Guardian Warriors became even more intense. Ah, why are you all here? At this time, Chiyu got out of the car with sleepy eyes. It was obvious that he didn't have enough sleep. His sleepy eyes swept over the Zodiac Guardian Warriors, and he reluctantly said, Well, if there's anything else, let's talk about it tomorrow. You must be tired, so rest first. Ryua, you make the arrangements. I can't do it anymore. I want to continue sleeping. As he said that, he put his arm on Ming Ming's shoulder and walked towards the direction of the villa. The other 4 women also got out of the car. Looking at the direction where Chi left, Ryua sighed and muttered to herself, He's really too tired. Since everyone is here, let's go back to the villa first. You need to know everything that happened before you came back this time. At this moment, the gentleness in her eyes had gradually disappeared, and what appeared was completely the appearance of a leader. When Chi-Yu was not around, she was the real head of the family, the leader of the Zodiac Guardian Warriors. Ming Ming's heart was beating very fast. She had never been so afraid, nor had she been so looking forward to it. Chi-Yu's breathing was still very steady, and he seemed to be in a half-asleep state again with his arm on her shoulder. His manly aura was so strong, although she and Chi-Yu had already established a relationship. However, there had never been a chance for anything to happen between the two of them. Relatively speaking, other than the plant soul who had just joined, the degree of intimacy between Chi-Yu and her could be said to be the least. From Ryua and Snow Girl, she vaguely knew that Chi-Yu had already had sex with them, but nothing had happened between them. Vaguely. Regarding this, Ming Ming always had some resentment. At this moment, the man she loved was by her side. Ming Ming was very glad that she was the first to jump out of the car and also happened to support Chi-Yu's body. What should she do now? Should she send him back to his room or go back to her room? Would he do that to her, surrounded by the manly aura of Chi-Yu? Ming Ming was already a little intoxicated. Her little face was red, and her heart kept beating faster. She was a little afraid, but also a little expectant. That feeling kept accumulating waves of strange feelings in her heart. Upstairs, that was Chi-Yu's room, and this was her room. But which room should she go to? Later, when Sister Ryua and the others came up, would they come to look for Chi-Yu? If she went back to her room, they should understand. Everyone had selfish times, and Ming Ming was no exception. When she thought that Chi-Yu could have had sex with the other girls, but nothing with her, she had a feeling of unease. She had an uneasy feeling, even though she knew that Chi Yu would not dote on her less because of this. But she still felt that she should not let go of such a good opportunity. Even Ming Ming herself did not know how she returned to the room with Chi Yu. When she gently put Chi Yu on the bed, the soft pink bed had already told her that this was her room, not Chi Yu's. Suddenly changing his form, Chi Yu seemed to be a little sober, and he made a sleep-talking sound. He put his hand around Ming Ming's neck, and Ming Ming's delicate body suddenly rolled on the bed with him. Ming Ming felt that her heart was about to jump out of her throat. The unprecedented feeling spread all over her body in an instant, as if she was instantly paralyzed by Chi Yu's thundercloud force. She did not dare to move at all, and the feeling of fear and expectation kept tearing the defense line in her heart. What would he do? Ming Ming thought nervously in his heart. Chi Yu quickly gave the answer. He changed the position of his hand that was holding Ming Ming. It seemed that he felt cold because of the cool spring. He pulled the quilt next to him and Ming Ming's delicate body completely. His eyes were always closed, and his breathing was always so even, but his movements were very coordinated. Even in the state of sleepwalking, his physical function was still far beyond that of ordinary people. Ming Ming's heart beat even more violently. She felt that even the skin on her body had become red. She stuck to Chi Yu and did not dare to move. She secretly said in her heart, "Sister Ryua, don't blame me. It's a pity that I haven't done anything with Chi Yu. What would it feel like? What should I do now?" As a virgin, and a virgin who rarely got close to men, Ming Ming was simply like a blank piece of paper when it came to the matters between men and women. Or rather, she knew nothing about it. Moreover, in such a shy mood, even if she wanted to do something, her body had long been soft and powerless. She could not make any movements at all. Her powerful strength had already disappeared in front of the abundant Kirin aura on Chi Yu's body. After Chi Yu pulled the quilt over, he naturally nestled his body completely in the thick down quilt. Perhaps because he felt the existence of the hot body next to him, he naturally opened his arms and hugged Ming Ming's delicate body in his arms. With a moan, Ming Ming's body immediately became even more sore and soft. Was it coming? Was it really coming? Ming Ming quickly closed her eyes and did not dare to look again. At the same time, she was secretly looking forward to the arrival of that moment. However, what came was a thigh. After Chi Yu hugged Ming Ming's right leg, he also put it on both of her thighs. Perhaps because the soft and elastic feeling made him feel very comfortable. After he put it on, he even moved so that his thigh rubbed against Ming Ming's a few times, and he was completely attached to Ming Ming's body. At least half of his body weight pressed against Ming Ming. Smelling the delicate virgin fragrance on Ming Ming's body, a satisfied smile appeared on Chi Yu's face again. His breathing became more even, and he directly fell asleep. Chapter 305. Ming Ming's body was stiff as she closed her eyes and waited. Her pretty face was flushed, and her whole body was constantly heating up from the contact with Yu Zhengyu. Why hasn't he come yet? It's so embarrassing. What is he waiting for? Ming Ming's stiffness lasted for a full 20 minutes, and when her mind was blank, she realized that a long time had passed. Her body seemed to be somewhat numb, especially Chi Yu's leg that was pressing on her thigh, and it would often move. Ming Ming opened her eyes carefully. The darkness did not affect her eyesight. The smile on Chi Yu's face looked so gentle, and that feeling of satisfaction immediately warmed Ming Ming's heart. When she was in the car, she was somewhat envious of Hai Ryua. If only Chi Yu was using her thigh as a pillow, but now he was beside her and also tightly pressed against her body. But why did she feel a little disappointed in her heart? Chi Yu's face was close at hand, and she could hear his breath. He really fell asleep? Ming Ming's gaze gradually became more gentle, and her stiff body began to gradually soften. She knew that her man was really too tired, or he simply did not know that she was still in his arms. But this feeling was really warm. If she could sleep in his arms like this for the rest of her life, how wonderful it would be. Gently moving her body to make herself more comfortable, Ming Ming raised her head and carefully kissed Chi Yu's lips. Only then did she stick her blushing face on Chi Yu's chest and slowly closed her eyes. With happiness, with a little disappointment, feeling the heartbeat of her lover, the quiet night quietly left with the sound of even breathing. When the light of dawn shone through the window into the room, Ming Ming opened her beautiful eyes that did not have the slightest bit of sleepiness. Yes, she did not sleep all night, not because she could not sleep, but because she did not want to sleep. It had been a long time since she was alone with Chi Yu, and it was such close contact. She really couldn't bear to sleep. Even though she was counting Chi Yu's heartbeat, she kept herself awake at all times. Occasionally, she would open her eyes and sneak a glance at Chi Yu or kiss him on the cheek, which made Ming Ming feel exceptionally happy. There seemed to be some changes in Chi Yu's body. That was the first thing Ming Ming sensed when the sunlight appeared. He did not know what it was, but it was pressing against his lower abdomen. It was very firm, and it seemed to be jumping. The heat continued to spread, causing Ming Ming's weakness, which had disappeared with great difficulty, to reappear. What is this? After all, she was also a university student, and she had taken health classes before. Soon, Ming Ming knew what was going on. She immediately leaned into Chi Yu's arms in embarrassment, not daring to raise her head. At this moment, Chi Yu's thigh was still on her body. She could not dodge even if she wanted to. Well, perhaps he felt something. Chi Yu frowned slightly under the sunlight, and his arm around Ming Ming loosened a little. Ming Ming's heart suddenly beat faster. Is he going to wake up? No way. She could not let him see such an embarrassing look. At the thought of this, Ming Ming suddenly seemed a little flustered. She carefully lifted Chi Yu's arm, trying to get out of his entanglement. However, it was fine if she did not know. When she lifted Chi Yu's arm and thought that she could escape, she suddenly felt a breath of hot air on her neck. Chi Yu's evil voice rang in her ear. "Little Ming Ming, where are you going?" Ah, Ming Ming was startled. Perhaps it was because she had accumulated too much shyness the whole night. She subconsciously screamed. She was a chicken warrior, and her scream was strong enough to make ordinary people faint. Of course, there was no ordinary person living in the Dragon Field courtyard, so of course there would not be anyone who would faint. However, her sudden scream immediately spread to every corner of the villa. Ruyue had already woken up. She always had the habit of waking up early, so when she heard Ming Ming scream, she was stunned for a moment. Then she blushed and chuckled. She said to herself, "This girl Ming Ming is really good. She actually persisted for the whole night until now. I can't seem to do it. It's her first time." Speaking of this, she couldn't help but think of her first time with Chi Yu. In that stone cave, that special feeling was buried in the depths of her heart, and she would never forget it. A faint light flickered. Raising her head to look at the bright sunshine outside, Rui walked out of the room to arrange everyone's breakfast. Chi Yu looked at Ming Ming and covered her little mouth with his big hand. Only then did the scream abruptly stop. Chi Yu said with a bitter smile, "Baby, do you want everyone in the villa to know what you're doing?" Ming Ming looked at Chi Yu and felt the heat from his big hand. She quickly closed her eyes, wishing that she could find a hole to hide in. It's over, it's over. He's awake. Will he do something now? That thing of his seems to be very hard. Chi Yu let go of his hand and once again embraced Ming Ming. Looking at her cute appearance with her eyes closed, he couldn't help but laugh. "I'm not that scary. You look as if you're waiting for me to rape you." "You?" Ming Ming, who had always been eloquent, couldn't say anything now. She quietly opened her eyes and quickly stuck close to Chi Yu's body, not daring to move. She murmured, "Are you awake? Yesterday night, you were very sleepy. I originally wanted you to sleep here while I went to sleep with Sister Ryue. But when you were sleeping, you pulled me and didn't let me go. So. Chi-Yu chuckled and kissed Ming Ming's delicate face. Smelling the fragrance on her body, he said in a low voice, "It's okay. I understand. It must be a little pervert who was in love with me and brought me back to the room. It's over. Give me back my chastity. You have to be responsible for me." Looking at Chi-Yu's exaggerated expression, Ming Ming was stunned. How could she have imagined that a person's skin could be so thick? She said in a panic, Don't scream. I didn't do anything. I'll take responsibility for you." Chi-Yu didn't expect Ming Ming to have such a reaction. He couldn't help but look at her cute, flustered look. He flipped over abruptly and pinned her under his body, kissing her heavily on the lips. "How will you take responsibility for me?" Ming Ming could feel the changes in Chi-Yu's body. For a moment, she was completely speechless. She closed her eyes in a panic, and her delicate body even trembled slightly. Chi-Yu's gaze shifted. Lying on top of Ming Ming's body, he felt the elasticity and comfort of Ming Ming's entire body through the full contact of their bodies. He said softly, "What a pity. Big the house was already built. Why did I sleep so soundly last night? To actually do such a thing that is worse than a beast. It really damages my heroic image." Although she was bashful, Ming Ming couldn't help but open her eyes and ask curiously, "You didn't do anything last night. How could you be worse than a beast?" And we. Chi-Yu propped up his upper body. He looked at Ming Ming evilly and said with a smile, "It's because I didn't do anything that I am worse than a beast. If you don't understand, ask Ryua later. Lazy bum, we should get up. Everyone is up. If we don't go out, I'm afraid they will laugh at us. Chi-Yu knew his own situation. Although Ming Ming was very willing, there was already a huge fire of desire in his body. His body was already filled with lust, and coupled with his love for Ming Ming, it was extremely difficult for him to suppress the lust in his heart. Because he knew that if he wanted Ming Ming now, it wouldn't be over in a short time. He couldn't just get up at noon. He could only wait for the next opportunity. Anyway, she was his wife. He couldn't run away. His body was empty. Chi-Yu had already gotten up. He didn't take off his clothes when he went to bed last night. At this time, he just tidied up a little and stood by the bed. Without Chi-Yu and the quilt, it seemed that something was missing. Ming Ming knew that she would never forget the intoxicating feeling in his arms. He didn't do anything. There was still nothing between them. This bastard. Feeling a slight chill in her lower body, Ming Ming immediately held her delicate face with her hands shyly. She didn't dare to look at Chi-Yu again. After tidying up his clothes, Chi-Yu simply washed up in the bathroom in Ming Ming's room. When he came out, he saw that Ming Ming was still curled up in the quilt and had no intention of getting out. He sat on the bed and asked, "What's wrong, lazy bum? Why don't you get up?" Ming Ming pulled down the edge of the quilt and peeked at Chi-Yu. You go out first. I want to take a bath." Chi-Yu blurted out, "How about I help you?" "No, hurry up and go out." Ming Ming's heart raced again. This time, she looked at Chi-Yu with a bit of resentment. Chi-Yu laughed and turned to walk out of the room. He also hoped to be in such a good mood every day. However, it was also troublesome to have many wives. He couldn't be with Ming Ming every night. If he did, he was afraid that his other wives would complain. Who should he go to tonight? As for Ryua, she was the best at coordinating with him. With sexual fantasies, Chi-Yu slipped out of Ming Ming's room. When he walked down the stairs, he couldn't help but blush. In addition to him and Ming Ming, the other Zodiac guardian warriors, Shangbing, Snow Girl, and the Plant Soul had already gotten up and gathered in the hall for breakfast. Chi-Yu walked down the stairs as if nothing had happened. Everyone looked at him ambiguously. Yan Xiaoyi quietly stuck to Chi-Yu's side and said with a low laugh, "Boss, you're not bad. You must have been busy the whole night. You made Ming Ming scream so loudly just now. You're the best. Are your legs soft?" "Soft my ass. Believe it or not, I'll make it hard for you in the future." Chi-Yu laughed and was about to hit him, which scared Yin Xiaoyi and made him run away. Qi Yu was very thick-skinned. Feeling everyone's gaze, he picked up a glass of milk and drank it. Then he began to eat his breakfast. Among his 4 confidants, Ryue and Snow Girl were a bit better. They only laughed occasionally. The plant soul didn't even dare to look at Qi Yu. Her pretty face would always blush inexplicably. Meanwhile, Shangbing looked at Qi Yu from head to toe as if he was looking at a rare animal. He muttered to himself, "Are you that strong? You did it all night." Although Shangbing's voice wasn't loud, everyone hears a master, so they all heard it. Hu Guan happened to take a sip of milk, and when he heard Shangbing's words, he sprayed it all over Yi An's head and face. Immediately, the hall roared with laughter. Everyone stopped eating. They were laughing so naturally and happily. The special feeling between friends made them feel so satisfied. Qi Yu looked at Shangbing with a bitter smile. "Whether I'm strong or not, you'll know after you try me. How about it? Do you want to go back to your room now?" Shangbing snorted and puffed out his chest, which was obviously more than 36 E. "I'm not afraid of you, but you just finished a night. Can you still do it?" Looking at Shangbing's provocative eyes, Qi Yu moved his shoulders and sat beside her. He grabbed Shangbing's hand and pressed it between his legs under the table. He whispered to her face, "Do you think I can do it?" Shangbing stared blankly for a moment. The firm heat that came from her hand caused her heart to tremble slightly. Although she appeared to be the most forthright of all the girls, and had even gone through the special desert storm with Qi Yu, she could not help but tremble slightly when she came into contact with that superheat again. Her pretty face blushed. She glared at Qi Yu and quickly retracted her hand. Qi Yu laughed contentedly and said, let's eat. It's really comfortable to sleep for a night. My body is a little stiff, and it seems that I need to find 2 people to exercise later. Is there anyone who volunteered?" When his gaze swept across the bodies of the Zodiac warriors, no one dared to make fun of him anymore. Each and every one of them lowered their heads to the point where they couldn't be any lower. They were afraid that they would be caught by Qi Yu, joking around with him, unless they were masochistic. This was the consensus among the Zodiac warriors. The storm of teasing subsided. At this time, Ming shyly came down from upstairs. Looking at her pretty face that was as red as an apple, Qi Yu really wanted to go up and take a bite. At the same time, he smiled bitterly in his heart. This girl, isn't she trying to cover up? Poor me, Ming. I didn't do anything, but now I have to take the blame. What a loss, what a loss. Ming was wearing loose casual clothes. Her hair was still wet after taking a bath, and her body was even a little warm. Her eyes were sparkling, and her skin looked even more ruddy after taking a bath, as if water was about to drip out. Even the Zodiac warriors, who were used to seeing beautiful women, couldn't help but be stunned. Su Dong looked at Qi Yu, then looked at Ming, and suddenly said, "No, I can't stand it anymore. Boss, if you want to bully me, then bully me. However, before that, I must whistle the rogue's whistle." The rogue's whistle sounded, and everyone burst into laughter once again. Ming's pretty face was even redder. This time, even Qi Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. As the saying goes, the law doesn't punish the masses. Looking at everyone's happy appearance, even he couldn't help but laugh. It took a long time for the laughter to subside, and Ming sat down next to Ryue. Ryue looked at her in surprise and said, Ming, you are amazing. Looking at you, it seems that nothing happened. I always thought that my body was very strong, but after the first time with him, I couldn't even walk. How did you do it? Sitting there, Ming finally calmed down a little. She picked up a small quail egg and was about to put it into her mouth. But when she heard Ryue's question, she immediately spat it out, and it fell into Qi Yu's glass of milk, splashing on his face. The laughter that had finally stopped erupted again. Although everyone didn't know what Ryue said to Ming, looking at Ming's reaction, they couldn't stop laughing. I can't take it anymore. Boss, I'll go back to my room first. I can't take it anymore. Vol laughed and climbed up from his seat, turned around and walked upstairs. His hands were covering his stomach, and his whole body was shaking. Modi quietly stood up, and with a smile on his face he followed Vol. Looking at their figures leaving, Chi-Yu couldn't help but be a little surprised. It seemed that although he didn't do anything, but between Vol and Modi, it seemed that a lot of things had happened. As the big brother, he really wasn't responsible enough. There was a chance that he must ask Vol how his development was going. Vol had changed a lot. Since the time when he was cultivating in the ancient behemoth period, his weight had been constantly decreasing, but his strength had been constantly increasing. The original Vol, because he was too fat. He looked very bloated. Now he had gradually slimmed down, and his appearance was much better than imagined. Although he wasn't very handsome, he was definitely handsome since he was less than 18 years old. And Chi-Yu found that Vol's height had changed a lot in the past 2 years. Now, it looked like it was almost the same height as Modi. At this rate, boys would develop later. It wouldn't be long before Vol's height surpassed Modi's. In that case, they would be considered a good match. Age was not a problem. Breakfast was finished in a happy atmosphere. After tidying up everything, Chi-Yu gathered everyone in the living room. Last night, Ruyue had already told everyone what happened this time. Hell can invade our world at any time. Although I managed to escape from hell this time, I'm still alive. Although I successfully ran back from hell this time, I was still very lucky. I won't say anything else. If we want to fight against hell, our strength is still far from enough. Everyone must continue to work hard and strive to reach the 9-cloud level as soon as possible. With every bit of strength we have, we will be able to protect our eastern world better. The atmosphere was very relaxed. Chi was back. The Zodiac guardian god warriors also had a backbone, although the invasion of hell seemed to be a very scary thing. But because of Chi-Yu's return, the Zodiac guardian god warriors actually didn't feel worried. After all, under Boss's leadership, they even survived the disaster of the asteroid. Why would they be afraid of hell? Their confidence in Chi-Yu had reached the point where it was almost blind. Chi-Yu, I just came back. After a few days of rest, I will go to the ancient beast era. I want to see how the battle between the divine beasts and the ferocious beasts is going. We have the advantage of Kunlun mirrors. If we can borrow the power of certain divine beasts, then we will be more confident in dealing with hell. At the same time, we can also bring Miss Xiao Lu back. Changjie smiled. Xiao Lu can be said to be enjoying herself there. I have never seen her so happy. Chi-Yu suddenly felt that his body was a little stiff because the 5 women were looking at him fiercely. He didn't need to ask to know what they were thinking. He hurriedly said, I will bring all of you. Everyone should go. The natural energy there is the most abundant. I can also help you cultivate. As for the extent to which you can improve, it is still hard to say. Actually, he had another purpose in going to the ancient beast era, and that was to find the whereabouts of Chi-Yu. Old cows, 3 conditions had been fulfilled. Chi-Yu also had to fulfill his promise. Since he had already agreed, and the old cow had even saved his life, he had to keep his promise. However, Chi really didn't dare to imagine how powerful Old Cow would become after obtaining Panga's axe. The rest only lasted for 2 days. Although Chi really wanted to let go of everything and enjoy a few days of leisure, there was something on his mind. It was very difficult for him to calm down. He didn't stay idle during the 2 days of rest. First, he went to see General Ji Zhongming and contributed the special metals that he had obtained from the asteroid to the country. Without a doubt, he had once again made a great contribution to the country. The strength of those metals was the best in the world. Apart from their heavy weight, they even surpassed the strength of any known alloy. The Yanhuang Republic had already started researching mecha warriors. However, the research process was very long, and they didn't achieve results like the United States. However, with these special metals, as long as they researched and analyzed them, they could cast alloys according to the composition of the metals. It would obviously make a special contribution to the mecha world of the Yanhuang Republic in the future. However, Qi Yu had made too many contributions. Even if the country wanted to reward him, they didn't know what to give him. With the help of the Kunlun mirrors, the Zodiac guardian god warriors once again arrived at the ancient behemoth era. They were already very familiar with using the Kunlun mirrors to come here. Moreover, everyone's strength had greatly improved, so it was not difficult for them to support the energy of the Kunlun mirrors. Now, Snow Girl could almost pinpoint the location of their appearance at all the places that they had been to during the era of the ancient beasts. Of course, when he returned to the modern world, he could do the same. This enabled them to travel less quickly. The emerald light gradually converged, revealing the original appearance of Qi Yu and the others, the 12 Zodiac guardian god warriors, including Qi Yu, Shangbing, the plant soul, and Snow Girl. There were 16 of them in total. The Earths were no different from before. They were still the same. It's just in terms of military affairs, after the guidance of the Zodiac guardian god warriors, they were much stronger than before. At least they knew how to build fortifications and make the best use of the modern weapons. Transporting modern weapons to the ancient behemoth era could be said to be a win-win situation. During the ancient behemoth era, the human strength had been greatly enhanced, and Qi Yu could justifiably obtain a large number of fruits to use on his Kirin group. As for Hu Guang and Yi An's Sacred Flame sect, they had already kept a low profile in the modern world. Their main source of income was the sale of these ordinary weapons. As for the price, Kirin Group naturally gave them the most favorable price. The ancient ecological fruits were selling like hotcakes. They had already accumulated a large amount of capital for the Kirin Group. During the ancient behemoth era, because there was no longer a threat from the Jili people, the use of these weapons had also decreased. Therefore, the consumption was not high. Before Qi Yu left the last time, he had discussed with Yi Ruo that they could not support the use of firearms forever. If they did, it would destroy the balance of this world. However, with the hot weapons that they already had, it was impossible for them to survive. However, it could make it easier for humans during the ancient behemoth era to capture their own behemoth companions. Qi Yu's goal was to make humans stronger with the help of their giant beasts, not with the technology of the future world. Only in this way would the balance of the world not be destroyed. Only in this way could humans truly become strong without relying on others. When Qi Yu and the others appeared, they immediately received the highest level of hospitality, whether it was the Earths or the other human races. He had long regarded Qi Yu and the Zodiac warriors as heroes comparable to Huang Emperor. The air is so comfortable. The plant soul took a deep breath as it exclaimed. The air was as refreshing as a mountain spring, nourishing her body. Only here could the natural energy in her body be completely released, producing the best effect. Qi Yu smiled and said, "We will be staying here for a few more days. It's perfect for you to cultivate." "Qi Yu, you're here." Yi Ruo's excited voice sounded. Her yellow figure lit up, and in the blink of an eye, she was already in front of everyone. Because Yi Ruo was Qi Yu's godmother, everyone hurriedly greeted her. Qi Yu went forward and said, "Mother, are you all right? The Jili people did not invade again, right?" Yi Ruo smiled and shook her head. She said, "They were greatly injured the previous time. Although we do not know where their foundations are and cannot completely destroy them, without a few decades' time, it will be impossible for the Jili people to launch another attack. With your reminder, humans are now developing rapidly. I believe that in the near future, even if the Jili people dare to invade our territory again, it will not be so easy. With your reminder, we humans are now developing at a high speed. I believe that in the near future, even if the Jili tribe dares to invade our territory again, it will not be so easy." Yi Ruo said, "Let's go. Let's talk in the tent." Yi Ruo said, "Let's go and talk in the tent. Let's not stand here." The freshest fruits were served on the table. The Zodiac warriors had long missed the taste of the fruits here, especially the ladies. All of them started to eat without caring about their image. Chiyu sat beside Irua. As he ate the fruits, he asked, "Mother, how is Elder Emohua? Has there been any change in the strength of the divine beasts and the ferocious beasts?" Irua said, "Currently everything seems to be developing in a good direction." "What do you mean by change?" Chiyu said, "In other words, are the divine beasts strong enough to deal with the ferocious beasts?" Irua shook her head and said, "Without the Bull Demon King's command, the ferocious beasts have become a pile of loose sand. However, back then, the Bull Demon King forcefully unified all the ferocious beasts and made great progress. In terms of overall strength, we are still lacking. Now, we only hope that the young Kirin's generation can develop quickly. Only then, in the near future, with the leadership of the King of Divine Beasts, we can launch a counterattack against the ferocious beasts." Chi-Yu muttered to himself and nodded. He thought to himself that although the situation of the divine beasts was much better than before, it was still very difficult to mobilize them to help him. After all, the number of ferocious beasts was huge. Although they were divided into 3 camps and restrained each other, their strength was still there. If he wanted to bring some divine beasts back to his world to help him deal with hell, it was obviously unrealistic. If the ferocious beasts lost track of the divine beasts and turned their spearhead to the humans who had just developed, it would not be worth it. It might even cause a change in history. That was definitely not what he wanted to see. Irua was very smart. Looking at Chiyu's expression, she couldn't help but ask, "Chiyu, is something the matter?" Chiyu smiled and said, "It's nothing. Mother, don't worry. Oh, right. I want to visit Senior Huang, Emperor. I want to make a trip to Xuanyuan's tomb. Ever since I left, I haven't gone to see my master." Irua looked at Chiyu thoughtfully. She could naturally see that Chiyu wanted the divine beasts to help him with something, which was why he asked the question just now. However, she didn't say much. Just like what Chiyu had predicted, the divine beasts didn't have any more power to help him now. At this moment, the door opened and a pleasant voice was heard. "Aunt Irua, why are you looking for me?" A tall young lady walked in from outside. Her long black hair hung all the way to the ground, and her alluring figure was almost flawless. She was dressed in the standard leaves of the Earth Clan, which only covered the fullness of her chest and the mysteriousness of her lower body. Most of her skin was exposed, which was full of endless temptation. In the entire room, the sound of saliva being swallowed could be heard clearly. In the face of such temptation, which young man wouldn't have any thoughts? Even Chi was no exception. However, he reacted quickly. With so many wives by his side, if he were to show anything, he was afraid that these few days wouldn't be good. Before coming here, he had reunited with Ruyue and Snow Girl, but Ming Ming and the other 2 women still hadn't had the most intimate relationship with him. The young lady was none other than the leader of the generation of goddesses in the music industry, the superstar Xiao Lu. Chapter 306. Seeing so many people in the room, Xiao Lu was also stunned. She said happily, "You're all here." Chiyu smiled as he looked at Xiao Lu, who had become much more lively and cheerful than before, and said, "Miss Xiao Lu, it seems that you are very happy here, right?" Xiao Lu nodded excitedly and said, "Of course." This place was simply a paradise on earth. The air was free from any pollution, the fruits that were blessed by the heavens and the earth, and the simple and honest people of the earthly tribe. A small wooden house, a clear river, bright and beautiful sunshine. These were things that didn't exist in our time. Here, I have countless inspirations every day, and I create songs that surprise even myself. I really don't want to go back. It seems that only the nature here truly belongs to me. Seeing her intoxicated expression, Changjie revealed a knowing smile and said, "Silly girl, this isn't a place that belongs to you after all. You are a modern man." He had to go back eventually. "You've been out for a long time this time. Aren't you afraid that your parents will be worried?" Xiao Lu's eyes revealed a tinge of disappointment. She walked to the other side of Irua and sat down. She said, I also know that I have to go back eventually. It's just that I don't know if I'll have the chance to experience the beauty of this place again. Chiyu, of course there's a chance. If you like, in the future, you can come here once a year. We will come here often. After all, what could be a better place for a vacation? Xiao Lu's big eyes lit up, and she said excitedly, Really? That's great. Chiyu chuckled. He said, Of course it's true. You just need to wait for the time we inform you to come here. Xiao Lu nodded repeatedly, and a special light flashed in her eyes. She suddenly said, Chiyu, do you have any thoughts of setting up a music company? Chiyu was stunned. What are you doing? Do you want to cooperate with me? Xiao Lu smiled and said, Why not? If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to come to this wonderful world, and I wouldn't have been able to get so much inspiration. Even my body had become much, much better after coming to this world. In return, I am willing to become a singer under your company. Since everything I have is brought by you, then let me repay you in this way. Hearing her words, Chiyu couldn't help but be tempted. Xiao Lu's voice was the most beautiful he had ever heard. If he had her support, opening a music company would obviously be a good choice. He turned to look at Ryue and saw that Ryue was nodding at him. She looked anxious, as if she wanted Chiyu to quickly agree. Chiyu turned to look at Changjie. She asked, Brother Chang, if Xiao Lu comes to our company, she will be very happy. Is there any problem with the contract? Changjie said, That's a small problem. The contract with the previous company is about to expire, and Xiao Lu has helped them make a lot of money. At most, we will just have to pay a small breach of contract fee. With our current power in Yanhuang, are we afraid of a music company looking for trouble? Chiyu laughed and said, Okay, then it's settled. Brother Chang, you used to be Xiao Lu's manager. You are obviously the most familiar with music companies. You will be in charge of running our company. It can be considered a subsidiary of Kirin Group. As for the name of the company, let's call it Kirin Music Communication and Development Company. I don't care about the rest. Just ask Snow Girl for any investment you need. I just want to be able to hear Xiao Lu's voice appear in the most beautiful way in every corner of the world. Changjie smiled bitterly and said, You brat, you are simply a hands-off boss. You completely handed over the Kirin Group to Snow Girl, and now you throw a company to me. Can't you be responsible for something? Chiyu chuckled. There's no helping it. I was born a ruffian and didn't go to school. If I were to be in charge of the company, I'm afraid I will spend all the money. You are the most capable people, so I will have to trouble you. This matter is settled. Oh, right, Snow Girl. Last time I promised Shueihua to set up a charity called the Kirin Charity Fund. Did she look for you and Ryue? Snow Girl nodded and said, She did look for her once, but she said that the money you gave was enough for the time being. She didn't need too much investment. She just told us. Chiyu said, It is enough for her and her father to be in charge of the fund. They are all compassionate people, so you can rest assured. Miss Xiao Lu, we will be working partners in the future. How much do you want? Just ask your uncle for it. How much you were treated in the past will be the same now. Your uncle will be responsible for everything. Xiao Lu laughed and said, No wonder Uncle said you are a hands-off boss. You really don't care about anything. Aren't you afraid that we will abscond with the money? Chiyu pretended to be surprised and looked at Xiao Lu. Abscond with the money? I am so scared. However, your uncle probably can't bear to part with me. Changjie said impatiently, Don't be so ambiguous. We're just friends. We don't have a physical relationship. PFFF, Irua spat out the fruit she just ate. She looked at Changjie and Chiyu strangely. Everyone instantly burst into laughter. Even Xiao Lu was happy. She was completely different from her reserved image in the past. It seemed that during the ancient beast era, she had completely opened up her heart and mind. The water of the Green River was still so clear. Under the refraction of the sunlight, One could see the fishes swimming freely in the water. Qi Yu floated up and directly fell into the water. Under the effect of the water thundercloud force, his body seemed to be swallowed by the green river. He didn't make any sound. He instructed everyone to stay in the headquarters of the Earth race to cultivate. He came to the green river alone. Xuanyuan's tomb was not a place that anyone could enter. The strength of the sword spirit was deeply engraved in Qi Yu's memory. He didn't want anyone to take the risk. As the owner of the Xuanyuan sword, he was naturally not afraid. Naturally, he wasn't afraid. The ice-cold river water stimulated Qi Yu's body. The feeling of his whole body being penetrated made him feel exceptionally comfortable. Qi Yu's swimming skills were still very good. With the energy of the source of nature, he didn't need to breathe in the water at all. The source of nature could completely filter the nutrients in the river water into his body and maintain the balance of his body's energy. He arrived at the entrance of Xuanyuan's tomb. Arriving here, Qi Yu became a little hesitant. The last time he came here, with the help of Emperor Huang, he obtained the recognition of the Xuanyuan sword. However, this time, he had already destroyed the Xuanyuan sword. How was he going to face his own master? He sighed helplessly and circulated the energy in his body. Qi Yu stealthily entered the hidden door. With a flash of light, he stepped on the real thing. The moment Qi Yu stepped out of the door, a cold light flashed in his eyes. His whole body instantly shook. Inside Xuanyuan's tomb, everything had changed. There was a world of difference from the last time he came here. Why? Why did it become like this? Qi Yu exclaimed in shock. The last time he came here, Xuanyuan's tomb was completely a golden world. However, the current Xuanyuan's tomb had become a gray and white world. All the golden light had disappeared, and the originally abundant energy aura had already dimmed. All the golden light had disappeared, and the originally abundant energy aura had already dimmed at this moment. Everything around him didn't have a trace of energy fluctuation. It seemed to be no different from the ordinary world outside. In fact, there was even a sense of deathly stillness. Floating up, Qi Yu had already passed through the original Sword Soul formation in the blink of an eye. The Sword Soul had also disappeared along with the energy, and the huge suction force under the Sword Soul formation had long disappeared. Everything had changed. Everything had changed. Of course, Qi Yu knew why this place had changed. It was him. It was him who caused everything here to change. Apart from him, he couldn't feel a single trace of life in this world. Using his fastest speed, he arrived at the platform where Emperor Huang had been. Qi Yu let loose and shouted, "Master, Master, where are you? I'm here to see you." There was no reply. There was no energy fluctuation. It seemed like everything had already ended. Tears flowed down Qi Yu's face. Emperor Huang's voice and smile constantly flashed before his eyes like a movie. Everything had already ended. Master was no longer here. This was all because of him. The Xuanyuan sword had been broken, and Xuanyuan's tomb had become a real tomb. Master was the guardian of the Xuanyuan sword. Even the Xuanyuan sword had been broken. How could Master still, standing there in a daze? Qi Yu didn't know what he should do. When he came here, he originally wanted to find Emperor Huang and ask him where he could find the heavenly fire to recast the Xuanyuan sword. However, his current mood wasn't one of disappointment. Instead, it was one of despair. Emperor Huang was dead. His soul must have disappeared because the Xuanyuan sword had been broken. The greatest leader of mankind, the ancestor of mankind, had died just like that. How laughable! As a descendant of Yan and Huang, he had actually caused the death of his ancestor. He had caused the death of his master, who had once taught him everything he knew. With a plop, Qi Yu knelt on the ground. Tears continued to fall from his eyes as he murmured, "Master, did you really die just like that? You are the greatest ancestor of mankind. I don't believe it. I definitely don't believe that you left this world just like that. Master, don't die. It's all my fault. I broke the Xianyuan sword and implicated you and Brother Xianyuan's soul. Qi Yu didn't regret it. He didn't regret breaking the Xianyuan sword. At the last moment when they were facing the asteroid, he had tried his best to let as many people live. However, if he hadn't fought with all his might, the entire Earth would have been destroyed. At that time, even he himself had forgotten about life and death. How could he have cared about anything else? He hadn't expected the Xianyuan sword to be broken under such circumstances. Although the mistake had been made, the breaking of the Xianyuan sword had brought peace to the entire human world. In a sense, it was definitely worth it. Perhaps it was because he had accumulated too many things in his heart and shouldered too heavy a responsibility, but at that moment, Qi Yu had forgotten everything. He cried out in pain on the platform where Emperor Huang had once stood. In that place, he was the only one there. He didn't hide the emotions in his heart. He released them continuously and completely. Qi Yu didn't know how long he had been crying for. As his crying gradually stopped, his mind power suddenly sensed a faint energy fluctuation. The energy fluctuation was very faint, but it was very obvious in this dead world. Without any hesitation, Qi Yu's body floated up. When he landed again under the guidance of his mind power, he appeared at the highest point of Xuanyuan's grave. It was the place where he had pulled out the Xianyuan sword. The mark left by the Xianyuan sword on the huge rock was still clearly there. The faint energy fluctuation had come from the rock. Qi Yu wiped away the tears on his face. Slowly and solemnly, he walked in front of the huge rock. He extended his right hand and placed his palm on it. With the help of the natural source of energy, his mind power was slowly injected into the strange, huge rock. The energy fluctuation trembled continuously, and Qi Yu's body trembled as well. Suddenly, he saw a bright light in front of him. Immediately after, the energy in his body was frantically extracted and injected into the huge rock through his right arm. With a soft clang, the two halves of the Xianyuan sword floated out of the Kongtong seal. The tip of the sword landed with a clanging sound and inserted itself into the crack left by the huge rock. The other half of the Xianyuan sword also fell and connected perfectly with the previous half. Under the fluctuation of energy, a special feeling was constantly produced. Although the connection was perfect, the shocking crack caused Qi Yu's heart to ache. Suddenly, a layer of golden light gushed out from the huge rock, and Qi Yu's palm was instantly bounced off. In a short period of time, Qi Yu was shocked to find that more than 80% of the energy in his body had been extracted. At this moment, his body could not help but feel weak. He hurriedly adjusted the energy to maintain the condition of his body. However, there was no more energy for him to absorb in the Xianyuan tomb, so he could only wait until he returned to the outside world to recover his strength. Seeing the sudden change in front of him, Qi Yu did not feel uneasy because of the large amount of energy in his body being absorbed. Instead, he was pleasantly surprised. If he could use his energy to exchange for the rebirth of the Xianyuan sword, it was definitely worth it to him. The golden light became more and more intense, causing the gray color of the entire Xianyuan tomb to gradually recede. The domineering golden light once again filled the space. This familiar feeling made Qi Yu could not help but tear up. This was the feeling of the Xianyuan sword. Xianyuan sword, are you really back? The golden light gradually grew, and layers of faint light enveloped the Xianyuan sword. The sun, moon, stars, mountains, and rivers on the sword's body emitted a faint golden light. However, the broken mark on the sword's blade was so obvious that it did not show any signs of healing. Qi Yu did not move. He only watched quietly. Even if there was only a slight chance, he hoped that the Xianyuan sword could return to normal. Feeling the rebirth of life in the Xianyuan tomb, he could not help but be filled with hope. Although he also knew that his hope might not come true, it was better to have hope than to have nothing. A long sigh sounded, causing Qi Yu, who was concentrating on observing the Xianyuan sword in front of him, to jump in fright. Subconsciously, he had already turned around, and his mental strength surged out, forming a large net and shrouding in the direction of the sound. On the platform below, which was the platform he had been on, an illusory figure gradually became clear. Although the energy fluctuations were not strong, that familiar feeling still made Chi-Yu's heart overjoyed. Almost immediately, Chi-Yu floated down and knelt on the ground, his voice trembling as he shouted, "Master, Master, is that you?" The illusory figure flickered slightly, revealing the appearance of Huang Emperor, but his current energy was clearly very unstable. The figure looked clear and illusory at times, and his entire body seemed to have become transparent, as if it could disappear at any time. "Chi-Yu, you are finally back." Huang Emperor's voice was kind and calm. He did not have the slightest intention of blaming him. Kneeling there, Chi-Yu slowly lowered his head and said bitterly, "Master, it's all my fault. I did not properly protect the Xianyuan sword, so..." Huang Emperor shook his head and said, "You do not need to say what happened. Xianyuan's soul has already told me." At that time, after it broke, he immediately returned to Xuanyuan's tomb. After all, this is his home. Our waiting was not in vain. Under the guidance of the heavens, you finally brought the Xianyuan sword back. Chi-Yu was stunned. He raised his head to look at Huang Emperor and said with great joy, "Master, are you saying that Brother Xianyuan's soul did not die? That's great. This is really great." Huang Emperor sighed softly and said, "Although he did not die, he was not much different from being dead. The damage that Xianyuan's soul suffered was much greater than you, and I can imagine." His own consciousness had almost dissipated when the Xianyuan sword broke. Fortunately, he had existed in this world for far too long, and with the last bit of his consciousness he was able to return to Xuanyuan's tomb. After he came back, he only briefly told me what happened to you. After he came back, he only briefly told me what happened between you two. Unless the Xianyuan sword is recast, otherwise he will never wake up. Unless the Xianyuan sword is recast, he will never be able to wake up. The light in Chi-Yu's eyes became much dimmer. "It's all my fault. I didn't think that my actions would reach the bottleneck that the Xianyuan sword can withstand. But can you please tell me, how can I recast the Xianyuan sword and revive Brother Xianyuan's soul?" Huang Emperor smiled slightly and said, "Silly child, you did not do anything wrong. I am proud of what you have done. Even when Xianyuan's soul returned here, the first thing he said to me was, 'You are indeed his master.' He also said the moment he broke, you have already understood the true meaning of the benevolent sword. That was something he had never expected. But from that moment onwards, he had completely acknowledged your identity as his master. In this regard, you are much stronger than me. You are indeed a descendant of the Yellow Emperor. At that time, even if it was me, I am afraid that I could not make such a decision so quickly. At that time, you have already put your own life and death aside. For the safety of our Earth, you are even willing to sacrifice your own life. Get up, my child. I have never blamed you. With a disciple like you, even if my consciousness really dissipates, I can rest assured." Chi-Yu slowly stood up with Huang Emperor's help. After listening to Huang Emperor's words, he felt much better. The recognition of his master, the recognition of the greatest ancestor of mankind, was the best comfort for him. "Master, is it because the Xianyuan sword broke, so this place—" Chi-Yu asked. Huang Emperor nodded and said, "Xuanyuan's tomb is the home of the Xianyuan sword. When the Xianyuan sword broke, this world will naturally be overturned. Fortunately, a bit of Xuanyuan's soul's spiritual consciousness returned here at the last moment, so that Xuanyuan's tomb can be maintained, and I can barely keep a trace of life. However, Xuanyuan's soul is too weak. When it fell into a deep sleep, I also fell into a deep sleep, and the whole Xuanyuan's tomb appeared to be in a state of exhaustion. Fortunately, you came back. With your energy support just now, not only did Xuanyuan's soul regain enough energy to repair its consciousness, but it also injected life into this place. As long as the Xuanyuan sword is recast in the near future, everything in Xuanyuan's tomb can be restored to normal. Looking at Qi Yu's expectant eyes, Huang Emperor smiled and said, "To recast the Xuanyuan sword is absolutely impossible for others, but you are different. If you want to recast it, you can only rely on your own strength." Qi Yu looked at Huang Emperor in surprise and said in a low voice, "I once heard from a friend that if you want to recast the Xuanyuan sword, you must have the heaven fire. But where can you find the heaven fire? Do you really have to go to the heaven, or the plane that is called the heaven realm?" Huang Emperor shook his head and said, "Yes, your friend is right. If you want to recast the Xuanyuan sword, you must rely on the heaven fire. However, the heaven fire is not in the heaven, but in your heart." "In my heart?" Qi Yu looked at his teacher in surprise. Huang Emperor nodded and said, "Yes, in your heart." The Xuanyuan sword, as the most powerful divine weapon in the world, was forged by the god of fire, Zhu Rong. The Xuanyuan sword itself was a perfect whole. However, no matter how powerful a divine weapon was, it had its limits. The Xuanyuan sword's limit was when you were fighting against that small planet, so it was broken. "Qi Yu, don't forget, you are not only a human, but also the ink Kirin of the 4 auspicious clouds who has inherited the Kirin's bloodline. As far as I know, the Kirin clan is the royal clan of the divine beasts, and Ink Kirin is the king of the royal clan. As the unprecedented Ink Kirin, you already have the best talent in the world. Even the energy you have now has reached the so-called God-level energy. One day, when your power surpasses the God level and reaches a whole new level, when the fire tribute energy you possess rises to the peak of the realm, with a drop of your heart's blood, coupled with the peak flame, it will be formed. When that time comes, the Xuanyuan sword will be recast, and it will abandon the last impurities in its body, becoming a divine weapon among divine weapons. Do you understand?" Qi Yu stared blankly at Emperor Huang. He had not expected this. To recast the Xuanyuan sword, he would have to depend on himself. His brain was working at full speed. He quickly understood what Emperor Huang meant. Didn't the power that the Yellow Emperor spoke of require him to break through again? Given his current situation, if he wanted to make another breakthrough, he would need to reach the true 9 clouds' strength of the ink Kirin of the 4 auspicious clouds. When that time came, he would be able to recast the Xuanyuan sword with his own power and resurrect Xuanyuan's soul. "Master, I understand now. However, what should I do to raise my power to a sufficient level?" Emperor Huang shook his head gently and said, "I don't know. Your power has already surpassed the scope of my knowledge. In a sense, you have already become the most powerful person in this world. How can I predict your future? Your current power has already incurred the jealousy of the shop. At least in our world, it is almost impossible to raise your power to the true peak. As for how to do it, it is up to you. Sometimes, maybe luck was very important. However, you don't have to worry. The Xuanyuan sword will stay here. With the support of the energy you just gave, at least Xuanyuan's tomb will not be in danger of dying out within 100 years. Xuanyuan's soul's consciousness will be reassembled under the nourishment of your energy. As long as the Xuanyuan sword is recast, he will be resurrected. The Xuanyuan sword will stay here, and it will always be in contact with Xuanyuan's soul's consciousness. This will ensure that the divine power of the divine sword will not be lost. Go, my child. We are all waiting for your return. I believe that it will not be too long." "Master." Qi Yu choked with sobs and knelt on the ground once again. He looked at Emperor Huang's kind face. He kowtowed 3 times on the ground before bidding farewell to Emperor Huang. He floated up and walked towards the door that he had come from. The cool water of the sky-blue river could not calm Qi Yu down completely. When he returned to the headquarters of the Earth race, his heart was already filled with a desire for power. However, Qi Yu also knew that it was easier said than done to raise the fire thundercloud force to the peak of cultivation in this world. Moreover, before he raised all 4 Thundercloud Force to the current Thundercloud Force level, how could he possibly break through the final realm? This was obviously not something that could be achieved in a short period of time. However, he really hoped that he could recover the divine power of the Xianyuan sword as soon as possible. Without the Xianyuan sword by his side, he constantly felt uneasy. Just as Qi Yu was feeling a little anxious, the Bull Demon King's voice suddenly rang in his mind. Qi Yu, you finished your task. Isn't it time to do mine? Qi Yu nodded and said, of course. Since I promised you back then, I will definitely do it. However, when Qi Yu retreated last time, I couldn't find him. As long as you can find him, I will definitely accompany you. I believe that with our powers, no matter how strong Qi Yu is, he won't be able to resist us. A faint, gray light floated out and shot out from between Qi Yu's eyebrows and condensed on the ground. Now the Bull Demon King's figure was about the same as Qi Yu's. They were completely condensed. Old Bull seemed to be very anxious. Looking at him, Qi Yu couldn't help but be shocked. Old Bull was indeed very powerful. In a short period of time, he had completely recovered the energy that he had used to fight against the experts from Hell. At the same time, he discovered that the energy ripples on Old Bull's body were mixed with some purple air currents. In the originally strong evil energy, there was also a pure dark aura. Needless to say, Old Bull had evolved. Furthermore, his power had increased by quite a lot. Old Bull chuckled and said, it's okay. You can't find him, but I have the confidence to find him. As long as you're willing to accompany me, it's fine. Qi Yu, I didn't know that you humans are so trustworthy. How about this? As long as I can find Qi Yu, I'll do one more thing for you later. Consider it my repayment to you. Qi Yu couldn't help but rejoice when he heard the old ox's words. Among all the experts he knew, the old ox was undoubtedly the strongest. Through the battle in Hell, the old ox had already proven that even the great demon king, Satan, was not his match. If Old Bull was willing to help him, even if Satan and the Netherworld king joined hands, there was nothing to be afraid of. After all, Old Bull's power was too powerful. Just him alone could almost fight against the 2 strongest in Hell. As for the other creatures from Hell, Qi Yu didn't care about them at all. Qi Yu scanned Old Bull from head to toe and said, looks like I didn't go to Hell for nothing this time. Old Bull, your power has improved a lot. Old Bull glanced at Qi Yu and chuckled. Aren't you still the same? Your power has also improved a lot. It's just that the things we obtained are different. The pure dark energy in Hell is really good stuff. To me, it's the best tonic. I didn't expect that after I reached the highest realm that I could reach, I could increase my power again in Hell. The reason why I want to thank you is also very important. Qi Yu looked at him somewhat helplessly. Although he was filled with wariness towards the old cow, he had no choice but to admit that this fellow was not only powerful, but also possessed intelligence that was not inferior to a human's. This made it extremely difficult for him to destroy the old cow. Moreover, Old Bull wasn't that easy to make use of. In Qi Yu's heart, Old Bull was still the greatest hidden danger.